Chapter 1630. Since they had already touched the undercurrent that existed in the Zoxic continent and had a general understanding of the local customs, there was no need to continue to take the bus for the rest of the journey. Of course, since it belonged to the when in Rome do as the Romans do, it was natural to keep a low profile. Riding a blood dog like Count would be too ostentatious, and it would be easy to expose his identity. Han Dong stared at the body bag containing all kinds of severed limbs, and an idea popped up in his mind. "Mr. Newton, please help me a little. Can you use these body materials to create a carriage that fits the local characteristics?" Under Han Dong's commission, the mechanical cube quickly reconstructed and transformed into Mr. Newton's appearance again. He stretched out his arm and touched the severed limbs in the body bag. Lines of regular lines that symbolized the mechanical structure passed through Mr. Newton's arm to the surface of the limbs. First, a large number of gears, screws, and other mechanical structures appeared on the surface of the limbs. Then, according to the regular lines, they were rearranged, integrated, and restructured. Ka-ka-ka along with the sound of machinery and bones. A group of skulls mounted in front of the carriage. It was built with a perfect combination of bones, muscles, fascia, and machinery. Since the carriage had been built, a suitable horse was needed to drag it. Han Dong directly chose a mutated ghoul with the best genes, a strong physique, and black hair all over its body in the brain manner, and used it as a horse. The bone chain hook at the front of the carriage directly pierced into the ghoul's shoulder blade to fix it. Its speed when running could reach a maximum of 150 kilometers per hour. After simply cleaning up the traces at the scene, everyone took the carriage and rushed to the capital, Zulbaha, at full speed. Not long after Han Dong and the others left, accompanied by the tremor of the earth, a giant ghoul with a body size of more than 100 meters that had been mechanically modified quickly arrived at the scene of the incident. On its back were nearly 100 secret sect members who immediately checked the situation at the scene. Soon, they found the instructor whose head had been pulled out and was completely dead, as well as the corpse that had sunk into the ground and had its spine completely pulled out. "Your Excellency, the attacker should be a spine that has reached atavism. He probably wanted to possess the strong bodies of the instructors. But in the end, he was killed by an outsider who didn't belong to the Zoxic continent. He might have even been captured alive." The bishop who stood on the head of the giant ghoul and held the bone scepter in his hand nodded. Now the battle is almost over in an instant. The outsider who helped him was very powerful and might have even reached the mythical level. Having help from outsiders was also a good thing. What happened here would not be investigated. Since this group of unknown undercurrents has started to attack the instructors, we have to shrink our defense line and strengthen the defense of Zulba. If they sneak into the capital in large numbers, things will be troublesome. Yes. Something needs to be mentioned here. The capital, Zulbaha, was very different from London, the capital city that Han Dong had been to before. It wasn't just the style, scale, and management rules of the city. Knight's mother, Ng's management of the city, was to completely integrate the king-level land deed into the city of London. However, the king of ghouls, M.O., was different. The king-level land deed that he held didn't cover the capital alone. Instead, it was used to maintain the entire Zoxic continent, so that this continent could be isolated from the rest of the world. Only a specific way could set foot here and establish a ghoul empire that belonged to it alone. Because of this, due to the increased area management, M.O. couldn't observe the capital in detail through the land deed. He could only rely on the Gear secret sect and the ghouls under his command to maintain a strict patrol of the capital. At the same time, a restriction order was issued. Zulbaha was in a semi-open state, and every person who entered the city had to undergo a strict identity check. In less than 2 hours, after the carriage passed through a dense forest called the Carrion Forest, the carriage suddenly stopped. The magnificent capital, Zul-Baha, officially came into view. 6 super-large towering white bones, as the important fulcrum of the city wall, formed a hexagonal flesh wall. Because M.O. had unknown gear technology, there were also precise mechanical structures embedded in the flesh wall, which could not only reinforce parts, but also instantly achieve full metal plating and a complete blockade of the upper area. Moreover, bursts of mechanical sounds could be heard coming from the city from a distance. It was obvious that there was a large factory operating inside. Such a sound inevitably made Mr. Newton smile. It seemed that he had come to the right place. It must be inconvenient to enter the city during this special period. I'd better continue to hide. Call me if you need any help. Okay. Newton continued to turn into a mechanical cube and hung on Han Dong's waist as an ornament. When the carriage drove toward the city gate, Han Dong, who was sitting in the carriage, suddenly said, "Sally, take off your clothes." Sally was surprised. She looked around the relatively spacious carriage and began to take off her clothes on the spot. She even tried to pose. Only then did Han Dong realize that his words were ambiguous and quickly corrected himself. "No, I mean, just take off your coat. The identity check at the city gate is quite strict, so we have to disguise ourselves. During the bus ride, I've collected a lot of ghoul saliva that contains genomes. Since those passengers are dead, I can borrow their identities." The gray tentacles pierced into Sally's body. Her skin slowly turned into gelatinous ghoul skin, and there was even cemetery moss. The claws that grew from her fingertips also became unusually sharp. Although Sally hated such disguises, she was still very happy to accept Han Dong's personal transformation. As for the inspection at the city gate, although it was very strict, it was mainly shown in one place. Due to the information about the undercurrent, it was determined that there was a special type of hybrid demon called spinal marrow body. The members of the Gear secret sect guarding the city gate would perform a spinal cord verification on those who entered the city. A large needle would be inserted into the spine and a small amount of spinal fluid would be extracted for verification. This is your temporary identity card. Due to the current special period, an undercurrent force that can threaten our foundation is infiltrating the Zoxic continent. Therefore, your activities in Zul-Baha cannot exceed 3 days. If you fail to leave the city and return the identity card by then, you will be listed as suspected intruders and executed on the spot. Okay, we'll leave after we sell the goods. Han Dong pretended to be a merchant dragging a bag of skulls and entered the city with Sally. The moment they stepped into Zul-Baha, the two of them, who had sharp senses, felt the pressure from the center of the city, deep underground at the same time. They even had the illusion that their bodies and souls were being eaten. Han Dong was very familiar with this feeling. Once, his first trip out of the city was a special training under the protection of the Behemoth Knights in the Stuart Manor. He accidentally attracted M.O.'s personal arrival. Now that he thought about it, he was a little confused. With Han Dong's current worldview, no matter how devout the Stuart Lord was, he would not be able to attract M.O., who stood at the top of the ghouls, by sacrificing himself. Either M.O. was narrow-minded and extremely protective of her own people, or she had come for other reasons. If it was the latter, then there would be a topic to talk about. Thinking of this, Han Dong could not help but sigh. When he, who was once a trainee knight, saw the existence of the old king for the first time, powerlessness was not enough to describe his state at that time. He was as small as an ant. It was also because of this that the scene of M.O.'s appearance became a psychological shadow for Han Dong for a period of time. The escape scene was also clearly remembered in his mind. However, the psychological shadow had long disappeared. Now, Han Dong was going to talk to the king with another identity. When he thought of this, a crazy smile appeared on his face. Chapter 1631. Zul-Baha, The capital of the continent of Zoxic was completely different from the hybrid demon cities that Han Dong had seen before. There were no roads filled with large intestines or meat balloon buildings floating in the air like Toad City. There were also no medieval buildings that retained the original human flavor like the City of London. Instead, it was an extremely different kind of city that was dominated by the cemetery style. In other words, there were not many buildings standing on the ground. There were mass graves of all sizes on both sides of the street. Group cemeteries, or a cemetery managed by the tomb keeper rules, or a separate underground tomb with powerful living dead guards. If one had to compare it to human society, it could probably be compared to collective dormitories, apartments, communities, and villas. Whether it was residential houses or shops, they were all located underground. Among the buildings that stood on the ground, there were only a few mechanical factories with flesh and bones as the theme. Some of them could clearly feel the surge of biological energy. They belonged to energy factories. Some of them were directly built with huge gear structures on the outside. Smoke pipes were constantly emitting steam. They should be processing plants for machine-related materials, props, or equipment. However, among them, there was also one that was the most eye-catching and unique. A special building that was more than 100 meters tall had a huge meat grinder installed on the top. The entire factory emitted an extremely strong smell of meat. Han Dong estimated that this should be a slaughterhouse for physical transformation, food manufacturing, or suturing. After all, Han Dong had studied ghouls for several years, and he had reached a very deep level of research. It was very clear that ghouls belonged to a kind of perfect experimental body with extremely high plasticity and almost no xenophobic reaction. Whether it was the optimal cultivation of fertility, it was possible to inject strengthening agents into their bodies or directly dismantle their limbs to assemble their bodies. As the capital of ghouls, they would definitely make good use of this characteristic to create an incomparably powerful ghoul monster. Just as Han Dong was observing, an old ghoul with a severely bulging back and a body folded at 100 degrees crawled out of a tomb not far away and slowly came in front of Han Dong. In his rotten mouth, the shriveled hybrid demon language came out together with a green gas of mixed bacteria. The two of you have a rare smell of the ocean on your bodies. You should be from a remote port city, right? In this extraordinary period, you did not hesitate to take the risk to come to the capital. I think you should have salvaged a lot of good goods at the port, right? I, Basil Screwbone, would be happy to take a look at your goods. If the quality is good, I'm willing to buy it at a high price. Han Dong glanced at this person, and his demonic eye instantly achieved perfect penetration. Mature hybrid demon. It was 273 years old. It was quite an old zombie. If it was a local, it would be quite familiar with the situation in the capital and could be used to its advantage. Can you be our guide, Mr. Basil? This Basil Spiral was naturally not a good person. He specifically targeted some unfamiliar foreign peddlers, and in the end, he would lose both his money and his life. However, when he saw the strange black and red smile on the young man's face, it was as if something had taken root in his brain, and there was no way to resist it. At the same time, the young man's words were like an order that had been implanted into his soul, and he could not go against it. Moreover, if one obeyed the young man's orders, one's body and soul would receive an unprecedented pleasure. I'm very happy to be your guide. I've been born and raised here for more than 200 years. At the same time, I have some knowledge of the underground network. No matter where you want to go or what you want to do, I can help you take fewer detours. Excuse me, how do I get to the Bone Vault? If Han Dong asked about other areas, Basil would answer without hesitation. But when the words Bone Vault were taken into his brain, it instantly aroused an indescribable strong reaction in Basil's soul. His expression was extremely ferocious, and his body was twitching slightly. There was a faint tendency to break free from the influence of the mad laughter. Seeing this, Han Dong quickly put a hand on his shoulder. He instantly suppressed the abnormal state of his body and deepened the control of the mad laughter at the same time. "What's wrong, Mr. Basil? Just now, I felt a little uncomfortable. Do you want to go to my king's residence, Bone Vault?" "Yes, we came from the outside world and have important information to convey." "Oh, so that's the case. However, my king is receiving an important guest recently. Currently, the stairs leading to the Bone Vault in the Great Burial Area are in a state of lockdown. If you want to go to the Bone Vault, at least wait until the reception is over." "Which important guest?" "I don't know. In short, it's a guest that my king is very interested in." "How long do we have to wait?" "The reception started today. I estimate that we have to wait at least 2 days, or even longer." "Okay, take us to the Great Burial Area first." "That's fine, please follow me." Along the flat and open streets to the center of the capital, they often encountered believers in small groups, wearing black cloaks and imprinted with the gear skull mark. Similar to the believers on the bus before, most of them were mature, and only the leader was atavistic. In addition to the patrol team of the Gear Secret Sect, there were also special patrols patrolling the streets of the capital in individual units. They were very different from the regular ghouls or believers. Even Han Dong was very interested. Their physique was often more than 5 meters. Every step they took would leave a strong plague smell on the ground. Dark green skin matched with well-defined strong muscles. At the same time, there were large and small mouths on the surface of the skin, and twisted tongues were sticking out at any time. Their eyes were covered by bandages. Their noses were completely cut off. Their ears were completely pierced through by a long and thick iron nail. Only a terrifying mouth that was completely cracked open and almost split the head into 2 halves was left. The inside of the mouth was filled with dense teeth and many extremely flexible tongues, the isomerization of tentacles, which could easily capture and devour the target. In his hand was a burlap bag full of corpses. Every time he finished patrolling a street, he would take out a corpse as a reward for his hard work. Han Dong seemed to have seen this feeling somewhere before. After a simple search in his mind, he thought of the first game in the Ladybug game. When Eugene activated the demonic book, he had a similar feeling. "These are..." Basil quickly pulled Han Dong to the side, trying to stay as far away from such patrols as possible. "These are the corpse eaters. They come from the Bone Vault, an army built by the king himself. They usually don't leave the Bone Vault. If you encounter these guys, you must stay away from them. They can't control their appetite and can eat us as food at any time." As expected, they are related to the corpse eaters ritual. Very powerful guards. The closer they got to the center of the capital, the greater the density of the corpse eaters. Han Dong and the others had been checked several times. It was not easy for them to get close to the center of the city. There was a circular pit with a diameter of 10,000 meters, the Great Burial Area. Those who could be buried here were ghouls with prominent identities, great achievements, or powerful abilities. At the center of the deep pit, it corresponded to the final staircase that led to the Bone Vault. Currently, it was sealed by a stone door with an unknown powerful seal. There were also huge corpse eaters tied up on both sides. "Looks like we really have to wait a few days." Since they were already here, Han Dong did not mind delaying for 2 days. Just as he was about to leave, as he turned around, the demonic eye swept past a certain direction and vaguely caught a glimpse of a foreign object. A group of special individuals that did not belong to the ghouls. When Han Dong tried to observe further, he did not find anything unusual. In this situation, Han Dong would never admit that his eyes were playing tricks on him or that he had seen wrongly. Just now, the demonic eye's adaptive observation should have caught something. Could it be that the ghoul capital has been infiltrated? This is the territory of the old king. What is so arrogant? Chapter 1632. Sally, did you just… Before Han Dong could finish his question, Sally nodded. Yes, my wool had a slight reaction just now. There should be a powerhouse wandering around the burial area. He's definitely not at the same level as the one we met on the bus. There's a high chance that he's at the mythical stage. I didn't expect that something could still sneak in when Zul Baha was on full alert. This is the drawback of using the title deed on an entire country to set up an isolated space. If it was the structure of London, this wouldn't have happened at all. Each has its own benefits. It seems that the negotiation with them… Oh, isn't that simple? Since we're already here, there's a high chance that we'll be involved in this troublesome matter. Han Dong's intuition conveyed a sense of uneasiness that even caused his eyelids to twitch. We're both hybrid demons. The intruder hidden in the undercurrent must be very clear about the old king's treaty and that this is M.O.'s lair. Yet, he still managed to infiltrate to this extent. Not only did he kill a large number of ghouls, but he even made a move on the Gear Mystic sect that belonged directly to M.O. and replaced his body. He was clearly challenging M.O.'s authority. If the mastermind was only a mythical, he definitely wouldn't dare to do this. There's a high chance that he's also a king-level existence. If that's the case, I might be in danger. Han Dong suspected that the abnormality, that the demon I had caught by chance might be some unknown old king. When he thought of this, cold sweat slid down his temples. Han Dong, who had a head-on conflict with Emperor Slayer, knew very well how terrifying the concept of a king was. If the other party was really an unknown king, it was very likely that he had sensed the demon eyes prying just now. It was very likely that he would be wary of the demon eye's special perception method and try his best to erase Han Dong, an external variable that had come to Zul Baha by chance. Han Dong quickly looked at the hunched and old ghoul that was affected by the crazy laughter. Mr. Basel, please help us find a temporary residence near the great necropolis. Please follow me. Using my connections, I can book a suite at the Tomb Hotel for you. This hotel can be ranked in the top 3 in Zul Baha and is only 2 blocks away from the burial area. Okay. While Han Dong and the others were heading to the hotel, thousands of meters away, close to the corner of the city wall, a mysterious man hidden in a cloak was observing Han Dong and his companions from different directions with a strange perspective. This person was the one that Han Dong had accidentally caught a glimpse of in the vicinity of the Great Tomb. He was also very surprised. This was the first time he felt that he might be exposed after sneaking into Zul Baha. Demon Eye of Necromancy? Although it wasn't the real magic eye from the Book of Necromancy, it was still a magic eye. However, its nature was somewhat similar. Furthermore, it had undergone self-development at a later stage. No wonder it was able to notice my existence. I have never seen this young man before. Did he suddenly appear in recent years? However, the one beside him was the famous Fourth Prime, known as the perfect child of the Supreme Mother Goddess. The Black Forest bloodline with the highest concentration in history flowed in his veins. Sally Love. She used to be a pretty good student at the University of Me. To be able to make the young miss from the Black Forest stick to his side in such an intimate manner, to be able to develop the magic eye in the manuscript to such an extent, he was definitely not a simple person. As expected, there was still a variable mixed in. This head filled with gray aura probably corresponds to that lord. If that's the case, it's best to ignore this person for the time being. Follow the original plan and attack M.O. directly. Deep Tomb Hotel, an underground tomb with standard management and a brand new design, was 100 meters deep underground. Walking down the stairs of the surface cemetery, they came to the hotel lobby. It was decorated with gilded skulls, cemetery moss that was more than 20 years old, and artistic puzzles. High-purity corpse oil candles provided illumination for the lobby. Most of the ghouls who could stay here wore skull rings made of rare materials and relatively gorgeous clothes. There were even some nobles who wore crowns handmade with finger bones. Miss Ghoul behind the counter. She had a head of thick and smooth black hair. She wore a thin cloth shirt that accentuated her figure and a short green skirt. The degree of decomposition of the flesh was extremely low. Only some parts of the body that were invisible to the naked eye had rotten gap. If one could disregard the fangs and mossy tongue, a little fresh fungus growing on the surface of the body, and a smell similar to cemetery perfume, the overall appearance was quite good. Mr. Nicholas, this is the key to your suite. I suggest you equip it with you to avoid losing it. The so-called key was a living finger with a precise gear structure embedded in it. It could easily be installed as a sixth finger on the palm. When the finger was inserted into the door lock of the suite, the finger would be stimulated and would open the door reflexively. Click. A spacious underground suite appeared in front of them. The air was mixed with a strong earthy smell. The large bed was a closed coffin design. After the two of them lay down, the coffin lid could be closed directly. No one would know what they were doing inside. The bathroom also used a separate water supply model. Considering that there might be tourists from the outside world checking in addition to providing corpse decay water and fungus water, they also thoughtfully prepared a filtered pure water supply. The room was also equipped with a fresh air system that led directly to the ground. It could be said that it was quite considerate. Mr. Basil, this is enough. If there's anything I need, I'll contact you again. When the ghoul as a guide left, Han Dong didn't have any intention of staying idle at all. He immediately joined forces with Sally to set up a seal on the current suite, covering it with several layers of different types of barriers. At the same time, he also planted many hidden eyeballs in the outer corridor. At the same time, he secretly told Mr. Newton in the cube that he might be targeted. When the overall arrangement was completed, Han Dong leaned against the side of the bed and asked Sally a question. Sally, if someone really wants to violate M.O.'s sovereignty and violate the Old King's treaty, there should be a middle-level and upper-level Old King personally coming here to forcefully intervene, right? But now, it seems that the Zoxic continent has been invaded, but there's no help from the outside world. What's going on? An omniscient and omnipotent existence like Teacher Bop must know what's happening here. Sally nodded. You're right, I can think of three possibilities. First, the invaders' current actions are only a slight violation of the Old King's treaty. It's not enough for the middle-level and upper-level existences to personally come and intervene. Second, for some reason, they've obtained permission to invade the Zoxic continent. Third, M.O. took the initiative to petition and reject the intervention of other forces. It wants to personally solve the invasion on its own territory. We'd better prepare for the worst, which is that we might wait until Zul Baha completely falls and still not receive any support from the outside world. Yes. If the situation becomes out of control, I'll give up on the cooperation and leave Zul Baha through the void. Chapter 1633. MI University. Fallen Pit Deep Space Hotel. An honest person like Bop rarely went to the Fallen Pit. He was rarely troubled by desire, and he also thought that indulgence was a waste of time. However, today, he was going to meet a group of teachers in the Fallen Pit whose level, reputation, and even strength were not weaker than his. The reason why he chose to have the talk in a high-class hotel in the Fallen Pit was because some of the content involved absolute confidentiality, and to some extent, it was not suitable to talk about on campus. When Bop stepped into the room on the top floor, he immediately made a ceremonial gesture. His right hand was on his chest, and he lowered his head slightly. 3 senior teachers, who were also professors, were in different positions in the room. One of them was leaning against the edge of the curtain, blending into the darkness. The second was lying on a comfortable bed, with fresh fruit in the shape of an innard in his mouth. The third was sitting on the sofa in front of the fireplace, holding a file in his hand, and looking straight at Bop, who entered the room. "Bop, is this the newcomer you recommended?" Recently, the middleman from the human kingdom, who is related to many old kings, Warren Nicholas, has caused a lot of commotion in the school. Although he is an assistant and has a void attribute similar to yours, his level is too low. The final goal of our special operation in the dark side is an existence that has reached O-King level, and there are many rumors about it in the school. You were once a student of it, so you should know better than us, right, Bop? His level of danger is no less than some of the reigning old kings. Bop nodded and replied in a very respectful tone. The reasons why I recommend Nicholas are as follows. First, in the list of candidates I reviewed, the only vacant assistant position is most suitable for Nicholas. Second, Nicholas had the experience of killing a mythical body alone in the London game. His uniqueness has exceeded the level evaluation of conventional definitions. He can be regarded as a mythical body, and a mythical body with decent strength. Due to the importance of this matter, if there is a problem with the personnel, not only will it lead to the failure of the operation, we may even be in danger. And this matter is related to the reputation of the entire Mishu University. Since you recommend so, we will conduct a special assessment for Nicholas. If he could pass the test, he would be the one to take on the final supporting role. Also, there's another reason I called you here today. We've received a special report that a mysterious undercurrent has invaded the Zosic continent recently, and a large number of ghouls have been killed. However, the proud and arrogant ghoul king requested to deal with this matter alone. According to my information, the undercurrent operating in Zosic is most likely related to our target. So far, we've discovered 3 types of unknown mantis demons in the Zosic continent that are suspected to be late-stage creations. Most of them are spinal medullary bodies. Bop was suddenly startled, as though he had recalled something. Zosic continent? What's the matter, Pop? Do you have any spies there? No. Isn't this too much of a coincidence? A few days ago, Nicholas had just submitted an application to leave the school with the approval of the vice principal. It was estimated that he would not return until the end of the semester. Since I was the one who recommended him, he paid more attention to me recently. When he left the school, he did not go directly to the main human city. Instead, he chose the nameless city, which is also an important port to the Zosic continent. According to my speculation, Nicholas is currently operating in the ghouls' territory, and has even come into contact with the undercurrent you speak of. As soon as he said this, the 3 professors in the room looked at him curiously. The professor sitting in front of the fireplace revealed a surprised expression. What a coincidence. If he's really in the Zosic continent, he can use this as a test. The premise is that he can really come back alive from the Zosic continent. The conversation ended. Bop teleported directly from the hotel to the physics building on campus. However, Bop was a little uneasy at the moment, so he temporarily stopped the experiment in his hands. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. Anyway, there's nothing much to do recently. Sorry should be by Nicholas' side. If something happens to the Supreme Mother, Sorry will be the best successor. The Black Forest must be controlled by her. I can't let her lose her life here. Bop found an excuse for himself and immediately went to the teleportation network of the University of Mishima. His thoughts were the same as Han Dong. Considering that he was a professor, if he directly teleported to the capital, Zul Baha, it would attract unnecessary attention, and might even alert the terrifying existence hiding in the undercurrent. At the same time, Bop did not want Han Dong to know about this. Whoosh! Accompanied by a spatial fluctuation, Bop also arrived at the entrance of the nameless city and boarded the dilapidated ferry as fast as he could. capital, Zul-Baha Great Burial District, going down the final staircase, made of pure skulls. In the end, he would reach the origin of the ghouls, the burial ground. This was also the ultimate holy land for all ghouls. Only those with extraordinary talent, recognized strength, or the ultimate product from the slaughterhouse were qualified to step on the final staircase, receiving the gift from the burial ground, known as the King of Ghouls. Currently, at the bottom of the final staircase, in the middle of the temple, which was made of countless black crystal bones, a young man with shoulder-length green hair and a stone spear on his back was kneeling on one knee in the deepest part of the temple. The one knee here mainly meant that half of his body was kneeling in the form of a human, while the other half of his body was in the form of Shugas. His dark green tentacles were spread out on the ground as he knelt in the most devout manner. And in the depths of the huge temple, a low roar that sounded like the overlapping of 10,000 corpses came out. Fifth origin, Eugenie Trevello. The evil and defeated myriad colors, the ultimate creation of the ancients, the most perfect mutated demon form. Indeed, you are different. Your body has far surpassed the mythical bodies under my command. How do you feel after receiving the corpse-eating cult rituals? It is quite compatible with my demonic book. I have already successfully constructed the inner church. However, there are still many things that are difficult to understand. I hope to receive your enlightenment. Similarly, I will also provide a portion of pure-blooded Shugas according to your request and fully invest in the research of the slaughterhouse. However, I will also add a temporary condition. When he heard this, a hint of displeasure flashed in Eugenie's eyes, but he immediately hid it. Please speak. A group of fellows of unknown origins are attempting to challenge my authority. Currently, they have infiltrated various regions of the Zoxic continent, causing the deaths of many residents. I hope that you can participate in this and help me eliminate these fellows who don't know what's good for them. This can also indirectly prove your value, and let me see how well you have mastered the corpse-eating cult rituals. Chapter 1634. Before Eugenius came to the Zoxic continent, he had already negotiated the terms. M.O. was the previous holder of the corpse-eating ritual. Because of the connection between the demonic book, Eugenius wanted to learn from this senior. However, the other party had no obligation to teach the younger generation and directly made a request to Eugenius. He asked Eugenius, the master of Shugas, to provide a sufficient number of high-quality clansmen for Zul-Baha's slaughtering research. He tried to transfer part of Shugas's attributes to the ghouls or directly assemble them. Under the condition that the terms were negotiated in advance, the other party actually added an additional request during the meeting. This behavior of raising the price on the spot made Eugenius extremely unhappy. What do you mean by testing my mastery of the demonic book? You just want me to do free temporary work, right? Along the way, my eyes have also spied on the invasion's strange phenomenon in the Zoxic continent. It's obviously different from the land deed wars I've experienced in the past and the special invasions. This arrogant ghoul wants to solve it himself because of the problem of face and dignity. I guess that the invaders chose to come here because of this character. Let's try to investigate first. If the invasion is more troublesome than expected, it's fine if we don't talk about the demonic book. Eugenius pretended to agree, but he was already prepared to run away. At worst, he could go back and study it by himself. It would just take some time. He knelt down respectfully and ended the conversation. Eugenius turned and left the temple assembled by the black crystal bones. He walked down the final stairs to the ground. Because of the opportunity of the London game, the Shugas clan regained their freedom. And the clan's nest, the Black Mountain of Flesh, also turned into a portable ball of flesh because of the existence in the void and merged with Eugenius. He was both the master of Shugas. He was also a Black Mountain of Flesh. He was also the holder of the corpse-eating ritual. A rather powerful world ecology was being built in Eugenist's body. It contained Shugus, the corpse-eating order, and the ancient research organization. Moreover, such a world ecology was not chaotic and random. Eugenist had already formulated a rather standard management and development method. Rumble. The stone door sealed at the top of the burial place opened. The corpse-eating guards, which were tied to the door and had a huge body and were personally created by M.O., instinctively retreated. A fundamental difference in level made them fear the green-haired young man who was about to walk out from the inside. Let's investigate from the outer cities first. Eugenist took a deep breath and made a plan in his heart. He was prepared to head to the surrounding towns where invasions happened frequently. If he could capture the invaders alive, he had many ways to interrogate them for information related to the behind-the-scenes. However, just as Eugene was about to walk out of the cemetery, a voice rang out. A palpitating feeling swept through his entire body. It forced Eugenist to activate the eye hidden in his body. As his body twitched, the hybrid demon surged up from his throat. Grimm held a special eyeball in his mouth, and suddenly looked toward the edge of the great burial area. Under the analysis of the eyeball, the structure of every tombstone, the flow of air molecules, and even the body structure of all the ghouls within 1,000 meters could be seen clearly. Eugenist, could not see through a certain individual whose vision was focused. On the surface, it looked like an ordinary ghoul covered in brown rags. But no matter what, Eugenist's eyes could not see through this ghoul. The palpitations in his heart also came from this person. In an instant, cold sweat was secreted from Eugenist's skin. There was even a part of his body that slowly softened and grew eyeballs and tentacles. There was a tendency to return to the original state of the Shugus. Eugenist was now a mythical body with the support of the demonic book. The only thing that he could not see through and felt threatened could only be one level higher, the old king. At this moment, a special language of the Shugus race was transmitted into Eugenist's brain, causing a genetic resonance that could not be rejected. Anxiety, dissatisfaction, and confusion. You seem to be having a very unpleasant conversation below. How do you know this language? The Shugus language. In fact, it was a slave language created by the ancients to completely control this race. It was rooted in the genes of every Shugus, and could not be removed. I am very interested in the postnatal life forms. Not only have I seen the Shugus outside in private, I have even personally set foot on the Antarctic continent and went deep into the Black Mountain. I have seen the former ruler, and also you who was just a newborn hybrid demon. Not only have I studied your language, but I have also studied your essence. It's just that you don't remember me. Come with me. Maybe we can have a very pleasant conversation. After that, the mysterious ghoul turned and left. Eugenist knew that there was danger, but his consciousness wanted to quickly follow. For some reason, just a short conversation with his consciousness made him have a certain good impression. This kind of good impression was far greater than the Ghoul King in the Bone Depository. He could not suppress the throbbing in his heart. Eugenist also smelled a hidden opportunity. The most important thing was that he gritted his teeth and followed. At the same time, he also wanted to know who this mysterious person who had been to the Mountain of Flesh and was proficient in the Shugus language was. He followed the other party to the capital's passenger center. He got on a flesh and blood car that could be seen everywhere and drove to a small town outside the city. When the car drove into the rotten corpse forest, and completely out of the surveillance range of Zul Baha, the mysterious person sitting in the front seat finally moved. Under the gaze of Eugenist's eyes, there were no energy fluctuations. There were no strange magic circles or finger seals. He just stretched out a finger and gently touched the surface of the corpse car. With just such a touch, in an instant, this bus that was pieced together from corpses was given a real-life consciousness. The scattered limbs became a unified whole, forming a brand new mantis demon pieced together from blood and bones. Without knowing what was happening, the passengers were immediately drowned by the strong acid secreted from the carriage and were digested in the body. Only Eugenius, who was wrapped in plague energy, and the mysterious person who caused all these changes were left. In the completely sealed bus, the ghoul's appearance slowly faded away. When a few atypical brain groups appeared, Eugenius' childhood memories were immediately evoked. "You are. It's been a long time, Eugenius Trevello. I didn't expect you to be here. My luck is really good. If I'm not wrong, you're looking for the Ghoul King because of the corpse-eating cult's ritual, right? Unfortunately, a proud, arrogant, and selfish guy like him. He should be very disdainful that the successor of the corpse-eating ritual is a non-ghoul. Even if you meet his requirements, he will definitely have reservations about you. He might even deliberately give you misleading guidance. An arrogant existence like him will not allow anyone to surpass him in a certain aspect. There is a high chance that he will see you as a future threat. Why don't you work for me, Eugenius? Treat it as a reward for what you did back then. Besides, I won't treat you unfairly. Once I succeed, not only will I be able to complete your mastery of the demonic book, but I can even fuse another corpse-eating cult into your body." Although Eugenius was a little tempted, he still needed to confirm some things in advance. "What are you doing here?" "To seize what I should have. Eugenius, you should understand, right?" Chapter 1635. Because he was worried that a king-level existence might pay attention to him, and because M.O. was meeting an important guest, the bone depository had been closed. Han Dong had been shutting himself in the hotel suite during this period of time. Of course, Sally accompanied him during this period, as well as Mr. Newton, who had also locked himself in the mechanical cube and did not know anything about the outside world. On the first night, Han Dong did not sleep at all, worried that the mysterious intruder who was suspected to be a king level would suddenly arrive. Of course, Han Dong wasn't idle either. Apart from playing a little game with Sally to improve his concentration, he was also doing something else. He also took the time to go to the brain world to ask Dr. Swollen about the research on the spinal medullary body. "My lord, the essence of this thing has been figured out. It took a lot of effort to obtain the stem cells that were not affected by the mutation from the inside of this spinal medullary body. Then, through the cultivation of the stem cells, we finally obtain this thing." What Dr. Swollen showed was an ordinary spine that originated from a ghoul. The intrinsic essence of the spinal medullary is the spine of a ghoul? No wonder it could hide from the basic defense line of the Zoxic continent and quickly infiltrate the interior. Speaking of which, how did the other party do it? How did they turn a ghoul's spine into a completely new type of medullary with independent consciousness? "Doctor, can you do it?" "It's not a completely new type of medullary that looks like a completely new type of medullary body, but the whole thing. We have to go deep into the foundation and study it to discover its origin. In essence, a new species has been formed. This is a rather brilliant biotechnology. It can even be said to be a method of biological transformation that violates the world's rules. When I reach the mythical body and can interfere with the world's rules, I might be able to do it, but the process is still very complicated. Moreover, I have a more terrifying speculation." Han Dong's thoughts were connected to the doctor's at this moment. He also got a speculation and hurriedly echoed, "Doctor, what you want to say is, the mysterious person who invaded the Zoxic continent has the ability to create a new body. Not just the spinal medullary body. They can even create a new species with a stronger concealment ability. Moreover, they may have already spread to every corner of the Zoxic continent, but they are hiding in the dark and not making any moves for the time being. At present, only the spinal medullary body is exposed, deliberately inducing M.O.'s thinking mode, mainly to test the condition of the spine." "That's right. Since it was possible to transform an ordinary spine into a completely new species, that's bound to transform other species. The spinal marrow is just a smokescreen thrown onto the Zoxic continent. Han Dong nodded. There was a high possibility that this was the case. Moreover, this method has been successful. Currently, a capital Zul Baha'is identity verification for outsiders has focused on the spine test. My lord, should we give up on this mission? I have a feeling that what happened here isn't simple. Might even be overthrown. Since we're already here, and Mr. Newton has followed us here personally, it's better to meet If the other party shows that they don't want to cooperate or put forward harsh conditions, immediately give up on the cooperation and leave the Zoxic continent. All right. However, Han Dong stayed in the hotel for an entire day, but no one came looking for him. Perhaps the other party did not take Han Dong seriously at all. Or perhaps it was just a casual glance and he didn't recognize the other party's identity, so it wouldn't bring about a fatal disaster. It's also possible that Sally was by my side. After assessing the risk, she didn't attack us. Then, Han Dong found yesterday's guide, Basil Spiral, who was controlled by the mad laughter. I've received information that M.O.'s distinguished guests have left the burial ground. However, the staircase entrance to the burial area is still closed. Perhaps it has something to do with the increasingly serious situation recently. Moreover, since you arrived in the capital yesterday, the undercurrents, hidden in the Zoxic continent, have begun to appear in different areas on their own initiative. Currently, many important cities and towns have fallen into a state of chaos. Since we entered the city, the invasion speed has accelerated? Yes, and in addition to the most common spinal marrow, there are other species. They all survive by attaching themselves to the bodies of ghouls, and their concealment is excellent. Including parasites mixed in the body cavity, and an eyeball life form, their concealment is much higher than the most common spinal marrow. As expected, the speculation is correct. Han Dong was shocked when he heard this. This was almost certain. The mysterious person who attempted to invade M.O.'s sovereignty had a technology of biological transformation that violated the laws of nature and affected the rules of the world, and it was even an ability he carried with him. If it weren't for the risk of being killed, Han Dong really wanted to meet such a person. How's the situation in the capital? At present, the situation in Zerbaha is normal. Our king has also sent a large number of corpses from the burial ground, and even the extremely terrifying fasting believers, into a comprehensive search and city defense work in the capital. An hour ago, Zerbaha was closed to the outside world, only leaving and not entering. Have most of the guards from the burial ground been transferred out? I keep feeling that something is wrong. Since the situation had become relatively serious, Han Dong made a decision. He would go to the burial ground now and ask to see M.O. directly through the stone door. If the other party didn't want to comment or made various difficult requests, Han Dong would leave immediately. Sally, let's go see M.O. Han Dong kept the magic eye open, vigilant of possible situations along the way. Just as they were about to reach the burial ground, the magic eye suddenly captured an unexpected acquaintance. At the same time, lines of starlight appeared on the surface of his body. Void's secret technique. Han Dong put a hand on Sally's shoulder and teleported her to the nearest underground tomb. Is there an enemy? Sally didn't know what had happened. She thought it was an enemy attack, and part of her body had already transformed into a black goat. Don't be nervous. I just saw an acquaintance. Eugenius is here, and he's walking to the burial ground with the same purpose as us. Sally quickly responded, Eugenius? Hiss. That's not surprising. After all, he cultivates the corpse-eating ritual, and the previous cultivator was M.O. No, it's a little strange. Eugenius' condition isn't right. Logically speaking, if Eugenius had just arrived here, he should have known that the Zoxic continent was in a serious state of invasion. He should have been quite vigilant. His eyes have always been on par with mine, and he has already advanced to a mythical body. If my magic eye had captured him just now, he should have seen us too. In fact, he didn't, and Eugenius' overall expression was stiff, as if he was hiding something serious. For some reason, Han Dong had a very ominous premonition. What happened in the Zoxic continent has long been planned. Han Dong immediately called Basil Spiral and asked him to go to the burial ground to see if M.O. had responded to Eugenius' request for an audience. Who knew that Basil would soon return, panting as he said, "I'm sorry." That green-haired youth didn't go through any review and directly stepped onto the final stairs. He's about to meet M.O. Right. It seems that M.O.'s guest is also a young man. Could it be the same person? Yesterday's meeting just ended. Why are they meeting again today? Is Eugenius the so-called guest? Let's go and take a look. Han Dong faintly smelled the scent of a huge conspiracy. Driven by curiosity and craziness, Han Dong came to the burial ground again, intending to use special means to step onto the final stairs that led to the burial ground. Chapter 1636. The capital, Zul-Baha, was fully prepared for war. In addition to the patrolling guards on the streets, as the surface entrance to the burial ground, the great burial area also had additional powerful guards. In addition to the corpse eaters that had mouths all over their bodies and needed to eat at any time due to the influence of the demonic book, there was also an even more dangerous creature. It was the fasting bishop that Basil Spiral had mentioned before. It was a special existence that had the direct bloodline of M.O. and had received the sub-inheritance of the corpse eaters' ritual. It was rumored that there were no more than 3 fasting bishops in the entire Zoxic continent. Mythical form, fasting bishop, Irfani burial. It had already transcended the concept of ghouls and was also known as M.O.'s left arm. It managed all the cemeteries in the Zoxic continent and was responsible for the selection of elites as well as the creation and selection of corpse eaters. An iron mask was embedded into the skin with curved hooks, completely sealing the mouth, meaning fasting. Because it had not eaten normally for many years, its originally strong body had become as thin as firewood. It was wrapped in a corpse skin robe and floated in the air in a light posture. Countless withered arms could be vaguely seen in the robe. The fasting bishop, as the name suggested. Irfani was once a corpse eater's guard. With its own willpower, it resisted the endless desire to eat in the body. When it reached the true meaning of fasting, the individual would be completely sublimated, which meant that it had completely mastered the corpse eaters. He's very strong. He's probably on par with the priests in London. The space around her body was distorted and deformed, even showing the shape of a groove. She had already transferred the conventional mouth to the level of consciousness. By integrating the concept of the mouth into the domain and consciousness, she could directly devour space and other people's consciousness. Also because of the bishop's existence, the space in the great burial area is in an unstable state. It's quite troublesome to go in directly. Do you need me to lead him away? Sally asked. Leading him away is indeed a good idea, but without your company, I might die if I go to the burial ground alone. How about this? I'll try to influence this person's thoughts first. If I don't succeed, you'll lead him away. You want to directly interfere with a mythical form's thoughts? Can you really do it? Although Sally knew very well that Han Dong was very strong, it was too exaggerated for him to influence a mythical body's thoughts without anyone noticing. The ability I obtained from the Ladybug game can be used here. This guy is constantly affecting and devouring the surrounding space in a small area. Unknowingly, it will eat things it shouldn't eat. Give me a moment, I have to arrange everything in advance. Han Dong took out the book, A Brief History of the Void, that he had borrowed from the library. Although his comprehension of the void had improved tremendously during this period of time, it was still far from Bob's. Some of the more profound void techniques had to be imitated in order to have the desired effect. According to the deep space formation described in the book, Creek, a void tentacle appeared in Han Dong's palm and began to quietly draw on the ground. The starry sky array formation would automatically conceal itself in the ground, and no one would be able to detect it. When he finished drawing the formation, he took a deep breath. Returning to the space of consciousness, Han Dong's consciousness sat under the talent tree that was filled with human heads. When he ate a few fruits, the area around his lips was dyed red. He focused everything on the maniac laughter. When the face of the physical body in the outside world showed an expression of maniac laughter, a layer of faint red mist descended. It enveloped the graveyard that was shaped like a deep pit. The guards living inside were immediately invaded at the brain level. They did not know that they had been affected by the maniac laughter, and their sensory abilities had been greatly reduced. The fasting bishop, Irfani Maizang, who was floating in the air, had unknowingly swallowed a part of the red mist. However, the maniac laughter virus that had been swallowed into her body was in a dormant state and had yet to be activated. Due to her indiscriminate swallowing, the maniac laughter virus slowly accumulated in her body. At the same time, Irfani also noticed the red mist that enveloped the area. Is the stench of the slaughterhouse here? No. This red mist doesn't seem to have anything to do with meat. What is it? Just as she was focused on the red mist and wanted to find out what it was, Han Dong immediately activated all the maniac laughter virus hidden in her body and affected her brain at the same time, causing her consciousness to freeze for a moment. At the same time, he activated the deep space formation that had been drawn in advance. Void transfer that transcended space. It directly carried Han Dong and Sally across the graveyard and the sealed stone door and stepped onto the final staircase that was pieced together by countless skeletons. When Bishop Irfani regained consciousness 3 seconds later, he was stunned. The faint red mist that had drifted in the graveyard had already dissipated, and the air was mixed with the stench of meat. She only thought that it was the bloody smell of the slaughterhouse. She did not expect that someone could ignore the influence of her domain on space and instantly break through the seal of the graveyard and the stone door. Phew! It was scary but not dangerous. Fortunately, this ghoul bishop was confident in his own ability. If it had been a meticulous guardian, he would have opened the stone door to take a look when he encountered a slightly abnormal situation just now. Has pride and arrogance also been inherited from their master? No wonder the mysterious intruder chose this place. Stepping on the stairs made of dense bones, breathing in the air of the deep tomb that was mixed with ashes, Sally seemed to recall some bad memories. She even subconsciously imagined the terrifying image of M.O. in her mind. Nicholas, is it really okay for us to sneak in like this? If we anger M.O., it might be very troublesome. It won't happen. At most, we'll apologize, combining the current state of the Zosic continent, the capital's full alert, and Eugenist's 2 consecutive meetings with M.O. in a short period of time. There must be a problem, and it might even be a major crisis that exceeds our expectations. If there's any danger, we'll immediately escape from here. Han Dong had already considered the worst-case scenario. If it really didn't work, the gray tentacles woven in his brain would directly borrow God. Combined with his current understanding of the void, he had absolute confidence that he could escape with Sally. Not to mention, Mr. Newton was also here, stepping on the stairs. Just as they were about to reach the bottom of the graveyard, Han Dong and Sally smelled an additional aura at the same time. It was a fresh aura that was different from the dead silence, plague, and corpses in the graveyard. It clearly did not belong to the graveyard, and it was definitely not the stench of schooners on Eugenus. This smell, Why is it similar to Dr. Swollen's brain? Suddenly, a faint tremor, accompanied by a powerful king-level pressure, came at the same time. It scared Han Dong and Sally so much that they instinctively took a step back. Mr. Newton, who was in the mechanical cube, also temporarily stopped his work. Someone is fighting M.O. Chapter 1637. A few hours ago, outside Zul Baha in the Carrion Forest, inside the bus that had been completely transformed into an independent creature. After hearing about the mysterious man's plan, Eugene, even as the ruler of Hugs, couldn't make up his mind for a moment. There was even a stinky substance similar to human sweat that was constantly secreted from his body. Nervousness, uneasiness, hesitation, but in the end, considering the kindness of the past, he comprehensively analyzed the strength of the mysterious man, as well as the plan that was currently being implemented in the Zoxic continent. At the same time, he also thought of M.O.'s arrogant and prejudiced attitude. Eugene finally made a decision. He would betray M.O. and assist the mysterious man in carrying out the final plan. In fact, it wasn't a betrayal. The cooperation between Eugene and the ghouls hadn't been completely agreed upon. Moreover, he hated the other party's behavior of raising the price, as well as the possibility of the subsequent attitude, and even the possibility of deliberately guiding him wrongly. "Teacher, are we going to the bone vault? Just like this without bringing a single soldier?" "That's right. On the surface, create the illusion of gradually advancing toward the main city, and let M.O. mobilize all the Imperial Guards and generals under him for the defense of the capital. Then, use your identity, Eugene, to quietly bring me into the bone vault to meet him. Of course, with your current strength, Eugene, you can also help me from the side. In the end, I will naturally reward you based on your performance. I can even help you decorate that flawless Hug's eyeball." Yes, at this point, the mysterious man created a few brand new species on the spot, let Eugene kill some of them and capture some of them alive, pretending that Eugene was investigating the invaders outside and had some gains. At that time, he could use the excuse of capturing the invaders alive as an excuse to go to the bone vault again. "Come, take the initiative to suck me into your body. It will look more natural this way." The mysterious man handed Eugene a special metal straw and briefly demonstrated how to use it. He inserted it into Eugene's nasal cavity. He pressed it against the mysterious man's many pieces of brain tissue that were pieced together, slowly absorbing like jelly. The brain tissue was quickly sucked into Eugene's head through the nasal cavity and completely mixed in. Even Eugene himself couldn't detect any strange feeling, and he even felt a little dizzy. He was no different from his usual self, not to mention that others would be able to detect anything. After packing the captured intruder in a sack, Eugenus returned to Zul Baha after resting for a while. He pretended to have gone through a tough battle and came to the burial area again. Considering what was about to happen next, Eugene was also very nervous. Although he tried his best to pretend that everything was normal, his expression was a little nervous, and he couldn't quite relax. Because of this, he did not notice Han Dong, who was also on the other side of the street, heading towards the burial area. He came alone to the sealed stone door that led to the burial ground. "I intercepted a team of invaders trying to approach to Zul Baha outside the city. 2 of the unknown species have been captured alive by me. This contribution should be enough to continue our transaction, right?" When Eugene uttered these words, the lowering of the stone door meant that M.O. had granted his request for an audience. At this moment, gentle energy also spread out from his brain, soothing Eugenus' nerves and making him look as normal as possible. At the same time, the mysterious man's voice was heard. "Well done. You just need to finish the rest of the journey. Leave the rest to me." Eugenus took a deep breath and once again stepped into the black temple in the depths of the burial ground. when he came to the open middle temple area that was overflowing with the color of black crystals. Wisps of rotten aura with extremely strong pressure overflowed from the depths. Wherever they went, corpse moss would grow on the ground, or some strange biological gears would grow out. Even the black crystal bones that made up the temple showed signs of being activated and revived. It seemed that the black crystal bones that made up the temple came from the elite subordinates who had died on the battlefield. Their glorious achievements in life had made their skeletons chosen to become part of the temple. Under the influence of the burial ground and M.O.'s aura, unnecessary impurities were removed, revealing the translucent black crystal color. Perhaps when they were needed, they could be completely resurrected under the drive of the power of the throne, turning into an invincible ghoul army that would devour the enemy. Crack, crack. The overlapping sound of gears and bones came from the depths of the temple. Under the guidance of some kind of device, a throne that had been mechanically modified and completely reshaped was carried out and came to Eugenius. The rotten aura constantly released from the bottom of the throne had already revived hundreds of black crystal bones, turning into black forbidden guards similar to venom that knelt around the 100-meter-tall throne. As one of the old kings of World S01, known as the King of Ghouls, was sitting here, the big mouth that was like a tomb slowly opened. Between the tombstone-like teeth, extremely gloomy and oppressive words were uttered. Eugenius, is this the result of your assistance? Did they just capture a few invaders alive and call it a day? At present, abnormal situations are happening all over the Zoxic continent, and the matter is far from over. I hope you can show the courage of the holder of the demonic book, cooperate with my ghoul army, and completely eliminate the invaders. When the other party raised the price again, Eugenius couldn't take it anymore and no longer pretended to be respectful. His eyes filled with dissatisfaction, he stood up and faced the old king in front of him. We clearly agreed on the terms beforehand. Why do you keep testing my bottom line? Even without your experience and guidance, I would at most spend an extra year or two to fumble around on my own. Besides, your understanding of the corpse-eating cult's ritual is not necessarily complete. Otherwise, you wouldn't be just inferior. What a waste of my time. When Eugenius said these extremely disrespectful words, the revived who were kneeling nearby immediately revealed their sharp claws and fangs, and dozens of them pounced at Eugenius at the same time. Buzz. Eugenius didn't use Shugas's skills. He also didn't use the terrifying secret technique of the corpse-eating cult's ritual. Instead, he grabbed the stone spear on his back and swept it horizontally. Dozens of revived people, along with the soul threads in their bodies, were all cut off. Their corpses flew everywhere. Ah! As expected of the current fifth prime substance, the new master of Shugas. You've only just stepped into the mythical stage, and you've already reached the late stage of the mythical stage. If a perfect Shugas like you is sent to the slaughterhouse for dissection, perhaps the most perfect ghoul can be created. After saying that, the palm that carried a huge pressure directly grabbed at Eugenius. It was as if tens of thousands of tombstones were pressing on Eugenius' body, making it difficult for him to move. Just as the palm was about to land, a stream of brain matter fluid flowed out of Eugenius' skull and quickly seeped into M.O.'s palm. Next, something that was enough to shock Eugenius for the rest of his life happened. Whoosh! Putrid, viscous black blood fell like a rainstorm crash. The right arm, which was 100 meters long, was completely broken and smashed heavily on the ground of the temple. The tremor spread throughout the underground burial ground, and it happened to be felt by Han Dong and Sally, who came down. The broken arm wasn't directly caused by the mysterious person. Instead, M.O. took the initiative to cut off her right arm, and there was even a flash of fear in her eyes. Chapter 1638. 1. The home field advantage of the Bone Vault 2. The direct blessing from the throne 3. Hundreds of years ago, M.O. went to the forbidden land of the Salas star field and accidentally found an extremely unstable plane crack. He did not hesitate to risk the destruction of his body and even the possibility of being completely lost. He went deep into it and finally obtained an unknown inheritance called gear ecology by chance. Moreover, M.O.'s body was torn apart and merged with the gear ecology. When he left the Forbidden Land, it could be said that he was reborn. It was this experience that constantly expanded M.O.'s arrogance. He had the confidence to fight and even took the initiative to declare war on the old Lower King. But when this strange brain medulla from Eugenus' body inadvertently rushed into his right arm, a sense of danger that he had never felt before, a danger that could even threaten his throne, rules, and real life, spread throughout his body. There was one more thing. This feeling that existed in his right arm reminded him of a rather dangerous existence. In an instant, M.O. made a decision to voluntarily give up his extremely important right arm. Boom! A strong tremor spread out from the temple. It was also at this moment that the mysterious man's final plan was officially activated. A circle of special domain radiated out simultaneously and instantly enveloped the entire underground area. Accompanied by a burst of illusory colors, it streaked across every skull, rock, and metal in the underground area. A strange phenomenon happened. Blooming, whether it was the stairs, the walls, or the zombie temple, which was the old king's residence, they were all affected. Soft fleshy roots grew out visible to the naked eye, and flowers bloomed at the top. However, the flowers here were not plants, but brain flowers. Dense, colorful brains bloomed in the bone vault. There was no gap at all, and it filled every space. It covered all the original matter of the bone vault and transformed it into a brain area. When the brain flower sea was formed, the connection between the bone vault and the outside world showed an intelligent blockage. When the Gear secret sect, the guards, or the bishops patrolling the main city tried to contact the bone vault, their brains would give feedback. They would even imitate M.O.'s tone so that they did not need to care about the situation below and could concentrate on the defense work outside the capital. At the same time, the Zoxic continent had fallen into an overall turmoil. At this moment, the forces lurking in the dark took the initiative to reveal themselves and began to rapidly advance toward the capital, Zul-Baha. This way, no one would notice what was happening in the bone depository. However, this plan was slightly affected by unknown variables. Before the brain bloomed, someone had already come down. The camera cut to Han Dong. He could feel the strong tremors coming from the hidden skeleton. Han Dong, who was stepping on the stairs, immediately deduced that someone was fighting with M.O., and all the doubts in his heart were resolved. I see. The external invasion phenomena were all smoke bombs, disguised as a gradual invasion pattern. Today, he suddenly changed the speed to exert a huge amount of external pressure on Zul-Baha, forcing M.O. to mobilize a large number of troops in the burial ground to jointly resist the upcoming external invasion. In fact, the mastermind behind all this had already figured out the situation in the place where the bones were kept. Using Eugenus, the holder of the demonic book, as a pass, he directly took action down there. His ultimate goal was M.O., the old king himself? What kind of existence dared to challenge the old king? At this moment, Han Dong smelled something similar to the doctor's brain. In the blink of an eye, the skeleton stairs under his feet had turned into colorful brains. Stepping on the soft surface of the brain and seeing the exaggerated scene of the brain blooming, Han Dong was amazed by the mysterious man's ability. It must have reached the level of a king. Moreover, its level is extraordinarily high. It turned the bone depository into its home ground in just an instant. These brains can not only effectively isolate the outside world, but also monitor the state of the bone depository. At least for a while, no one can discover the abnormality below. Our whereabouts are also likely to be exposed to the other party's perception field. By the way, the brains here seem to be somewhat similar to the doctor. Han Dong quickly called the doctor to provide him with detailed senses of the outside world. When the swollen doctor saw the brains on the ground, he was so scared that he kept rubbing his brains. This is an existence that has reached the level of 10,000 brains. The legend is actually true. Doctor, briefly explain. When I found out that I came from the Migo race, I conducted a related investigation. As a highly intelligent race in the hybrid demon world, Migo has connections with many old Wangdu and provides them with advanced technological support in exchange for high-value feedback. Like me, the main body of a Migo is the brain. The relevant evolution is also mainly at the brain level. Due to the need to absorb a lot of knowledge during the growth period, a main brain is often the center, and then various subbrains are derived. The strength of a Migo is often evaluated by the number of brains. At present, I can only reach the level of 100 brains. There should be no more than 10 Migos with 1,000 brains in the entire universe. Rumor has it that there is a Migo that has reached the level of 10,000 brains. There is very little information related to it, and it has even been deliberately erased. But there is a mistake. Only the 10,000 brains level can directly cover the old king's lair completely by splitting the brain. Lord, let's get out of here quickly. If this legendary Migo regards us as an enemy, he can control, interfere, or even directly detonate our brains just by getting close to us. Even if your brain is a treasure, you must avoid such a dangerous existence. Hearing this, Han Dong showed an almost crazy smile. Not only did the doctor's words not have a warning effect, but it also increased his curiosity. Doctor, let's reenact the brain fusion between the ladybug game? You can be my second brain, how about that? Do we really have to do this? Such an interesting thing is happening right in front of our eyes. The legendary Migo has also appeared here. How can I bear to leave? It is also an opportunity to be able to witness what is happening here. Doctor, you are an anomaly among the Migos. With my brain, you will definitely be able to resist the influence of the external brain. Besides, this legendary Migo is busy dealing with M.O. This is the real old king. No matter how confident you are, you must pay a certain price, right? Lord, do you want to take advantage of the situation where both sides are evenly matched to kill this legendary Migo? In this way you can make M.O. owe you a favor and fully cooperate with you? Let's see the specific situation before making a conclusion. I really want to know the true purpose of this Migo. I also want to know what means it has to dare to directly challenge the old king in the other party's lair. Come on, Doctor. It was completely different from the situation in the game. There were no restrictions here. The fusion between the two immediately reached a brand new state, and the level of thinking was also comprehensively improved, accompanied by a burst of squirming and expansion in the brain. Hair loss. Patches of hair kept falling out, almost all of it falling out. However, Han Dong did not become bald. Squeak, 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 slender, flesh-red brain whiskers were squeezed out from the hair follicles on the scalp to replace the original hair. The length was just right to the side of the ear. Stepping on the brain flower that filled the underground space, finally arrived in front of the zombie temple. However, the temple door was also filled with brains and formed a powerful barrier seal. Chapter 1639. The density of the brain used to seal the temple is dozens of times that of the other areas. Each brain is completely squeezed together, and even piled up into a rather solid spiral structure. There is only one purpose for doing this, so that the battle fluctuations inside the temple won't spread out as much as possible. They want to directly attack the king without disturbing the forces on the ground. Even so, I can still feel a weak but powerful pressure coming from inside. Han Dong stepped forward and directly gave it an intimate stick. He stuck his forehead to the spiral brain that filled the door of the temple, then he used the new brain hair that had grown on his scalp after fusing with the doctor. Soft, fleshy red hair was all connected to the brain tissue blocking the door of the temple. Han Dong didn't do this to remove the seal. Instead, he planned to use the brain attack as a detector, to drill into the brain group blocking the door of the temple and try his best to find out what was happening inside. As the brain hair went deeper, the battle fluctuations felt more and more intense. But Han Dong wasn't satisfied. He wanted to spy on the real situation inside. The deeper he went, the heavier the tombstone felt on the surface of the brain, as well as the repulsive force from the brain seal itself. Get in! Han Dong gritted his teeth and focused all his attention on the brain hair. At the same time, he poured all the potential of his talent, the tentacle lover, into it. It was firm and flexible. It was limited but moist. Finally, a slender and straight brain hair successfully penetrated the brain barrier and came inside. He could clearly feel the king-level battle taking place inside the temple. Not only that, in addition to the two king-level auras that were colliding head-on, there was also a mythical aura that wasn't weak at all. Eugenus wasn't afraid of fighting. He also participated in this king-level battle and played a certain role. Magic eye transfer. The magic eye could appear on any part of Han Dong's body according to his will. An eyeball with patterns printed on it. Like a fruit, it slowly grew at the end of the brain hair. He carefully observed the battle inside the temple. 2 against 1. Eugenus isn't afraid of the king-level pressure and is working with the mysterious man to deal with them. Oh! During the observation, Han Dong was so excited that he stood on his tiptoes when he saw the incredible battle scene. A large number of gray tentacles even grew out of the back of his head and wriggled crazily in the air. Sally seemed bored and quietly stuck to Han Dong, allowing the gray tentacles to scratch her body. It even made her twitch, the hair between her legs all stood up, and her face flushed red. Nicholas, I want to see it too. Come on! Han Dong took the initiative to extend a tentacle connected to the sensory nerves from the back of his head and entangled it with Sally's moist tongue. He successfully connected her to the visual system so that they could observe the battle happening inside together. In the instant that Sally saw the scene of the battle, the lust that was growing in her body instantly dissipated. Although she had seen many battles between king stage cultivators, she had never seen one before. This time, however, it was completely different. The battle that had taken place in the temple had already exceeded Sally's imagination. At the same time, Sally was slowly able to clearly see the mysterious person's true appearance and physical characteristics. It was an outline constructed by countless brains. The wrinkled face that was hidden in the brain was similar to that of a human. A familiar name surfaced in Sally's mind. How could this be? It's Mr. Francis Morgan. Limitless brains, all sorts of new types of hybrid demons that can't be categorized. Everything makes sense now. Mr. Francis? Is this person from Mishima University? Sally was very excited. Yes. Mr. Morgan was once a professor at Mishima University and was once the dean of the Life Science Academy. However, due to special reasons, he was removed from that position not long after. At the same time, in the eyes of both the students and the teachers, he was an anomaly. When we were studying at Mishima University, whenever we heard that Mr. Morgan was having a class this week, we would prepare for the class at least 1 day in advance and arrive at the classroom at least 1 hour before the class. Anyone who offended Teacher Morgan wouldn't have a good ending. But he was actually quite responsible. Once, I had a question about the black goat's fertility that I did not quite understand, so I mustered up the courage to ask him. In the end, Mr. Morgan not only gave me a detailed explanation, he even sent me detailed information after the class. It was all written down by him personally. So personally, I always thought that he was a very responsible teacher, but it was hard for others to understand him. A few years after I graduated, I happened to hear in the Black Forest that for some reason, Mr. Morgan broke off his relationship with Mishima University. He was even listed as a dangerous entity. After that, I never heard anything about him again. Han Dong memorized this information in his heart. At the same time, his attention was once again attracted by the situation inside the temple. Terrifyingly strong. According to Sally Migo, who was once a professor at Mishima University and even the dean, had unimaginable power and an ability that made Han Dong drool. At that moment, M.O., who had the blessing of a throne, a temple, and had undergone gear modification, was actually suppressed. Is this the reason why this person dared to find M.O. alone? So strong. Furthermore, whether it was the continent of Zoxic, the ghouls, or M.O., this person had done a lot of research on them. His every attack was targeted at their weak points and was extremely effective. The severed arm of the king only needed a slight touch to evolve into a new creature under his control. Life was being created all the time, and it was building an advantage every second. He was constantly influencing and attacking M.O.'s weakest brain area through the brain. The situation is set. In his field of vision. As the battle progressed, more and more life materials were created by Professor Morgan. Every part of M.O.'s body that was cut off would turn into a corpse-eating creature that carried similar attributes and had the same level as a mythical creature. Especially the entire right arm that was cut off at the beginning, it turned into a one-eyed demon at the peak of the mythical level. The balance was beginning to tilt. Nicholas, should we go? If we save M.O. at this moment, the cooperation you want will definitely happen. Will. Although Sally said this, she had no confidence in herself. No. I've changed my mind. Furthermore, this wasn't the evenly matched situation that I'd expected. Even if we use all our strength, we should only be able to barely maintain the balance, and we have to take a huge risk. I'm more interested in this Professor Morgan now. Perhaps we can establish a more interesting cooperation that is more conducive to development. Thinking of this, Han Dong told Mr. Newton in the Rubik's Cube about a long-term plan that he had made on the spot. You can decide on this matter yourself. As long as you get a better result, as long as it's beneficial to the development of the holy city and mankind, I'll support it. Besides, you were the one who introduced me to such an opportunity. If we can reach a deeper level of technical cooperation, I'll naturally be very happy. Thank you, Mr. Newton. Well, if there's anything you need help with, I'll do it myself. About half an hour passed. A scene that Han Dong and Sally would never forget appeared in the visual images collected by the magic eye. It was incomparably tragic, as if millions of corpses were wailing at the same time, accompanied by the terrifying screams of hundreds of tons of machinery rubbing against each other and jamming. They echoed in the bone depository. Even the brain group that sealed the temple could not completely block out such screams. The screams of pain coming from M.O. Professor Morgan. In a posture that even the magic eye could not analyze, while cutting off M.O.'s other arm, it actually drilled into her back and pulled out her spine, which was hundreds of meters long, along with half of her brain. The seriously injured M.O. exhausted her remaining physical strength and temporarily built a mechanical spine to support her body. She stopped fighting and forcefully broke through the brain barrier at the top of the temple. After crashing out of the ground, she swallowed hundreds of thousands of elite ghouls, including the body of a bishop, before she barely recovered to a certain extent. She had no intention of continuing to fight at all, and there was even fear in her eyes. She used the secret method of ghouls to bite through space, took the capital of Zerbaha, and the remaining elite troops away from the Zoxic continent and headed to an unknown planet in the universe. She did not even have time to remove the king-level land deed that was tied to the Zoxic continent. Chapter 1640. Doctor, can you do this brain posture? The brain can actually be used like this. The last scene made Han Dong's blood boil. The madness in his body was awakened, and for a moment, he even forgot the dangerous situation he was in. The brain posture, displayed by Professor Morgan in the final stage, was beyond the understanding of everyone present. Even Eugenius, who was fighting with him, was stunned for a long time. This trump card directly broke the balance that M.O. was struggling to maintain and uprooted her entire spine. Han Dong was also glad that he stayed outside and did not participate in this battle. This is the extreme use of the brain. It's beyond my understanding. Lord, aren't we going to retreat? The doctor was so scared that his brain had constricted, and he wanted to leave all the time. At this moment, a voice filled with king-level pressure used the brain cluster in the underground area to forcefully affect Han Dong's consciousness. Have you seen enough? It was just an ordinary sentence. It directly caused Han Dong to bleed from his 7 orifices and his eyeballs to explode. Even with the doctor attached to the brain, it could only play a mitigating role. Senior, Han Dong resisted the pressure of his consciousness and wanted to propose a cooperation proposal. Unexpectedly, a voice filled with evil and greed directly filled Han Dong's skull. There seems to be a special Migo in your brain. Give it to me. This sentence made Han Dong frown. He could clearly hear the negative emotions contained within the words, especially the endless greed. It seemed that after the battle with M.O., he had consumed a large amount of brain essence, and was even in an extreme state of brain damage. It was difficult for him to maintain his normal rationality, and was in urgent need of brain essence. If Han Dong were to give up the other lives in the manner, there would be room for discussion. But if he were to hand over the doctor, that was absolutely impossible. Sorry, the doctor is one of my most important subordinate. This is the only thing we can't talk about. They stopped talking. Professor Morgan's endless greed made him rush directly to Han Dong, who was at the entrance of the temple. He tried to pry open his skull and suck the essence inside. Although he had already removed his ultimate stance when fighting with M.O., he was still in his current state. However, it still presented an exaggerated appearance of muscles, bones, and even outer clothes constructed from the brain. Even the outermost layer of the cloak was made of the brain. The surface was full of twisted but relatively regular brain circuits. Every attack would put a huge burden on the opponent's brain. Han Dong felt helpless as he sensed the king-level existence approaching. Since the brain of the bone depository was completely sealed, even if he wanted to escape using the void, he would still need to drill a hole. At the very least, he would need to draw an amplification formation to break through the defense of the brain. Sally, prepare for battle. Han Dong had already weaved a gray imprint in his brain and was ready to step into the long-lost state of borrowing spirit. Right at this moment, a voice suddenly sounded. The analysis of the brain has basically been completed. I will hold him back. You guys think of a way to leave this place. As soon as he finished speaking, under the control of some kind of power, the group of brains that filled the front door of the temple instantly drowned Han Dong and Sally like a tidal wave. Every brain became extremely sticky, tightly binding the two people's bodies. Professor Morgan also arrived at this moment. His eyes locked on Han Dong's body, who was in the middle of the brain. His tongue had turned into a straw. Just as he was about to approach, click, 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 the mechanical tesseract turned slightly. Whoosh! Each of the colorful brains that drowned and bound Han Dong's body was completely penetrated by the mechanical cross. As they lost their activity, they were gradually transformed into mechanical product. At the same time, The mechanical tesseract was also undergoing a deep unfolding. It finally turned into a knight armor that symbolized the highest technology of the sacred city. The basic material was formed by mixing rare metals and special brass obtained from the Destiny space. It was personally designed and forged by Mr. Newton. The back of the cloak was also printed with the iconic Steam Knights emblem. Only someone with Mr. Newton's physique, intelligence, and mechanical control would be able to control such a complicated armor. Boom! A punch was thrown. The tremor that was no less than the previous battle spread in the underground area. Although Professor Morgan had caught it with his arm, his body was pushed back by 5 meters, and a huge pit appeared on the ground. Machinery, and it can carry out super-fast mechanical creation. Are humans also at this level? Morgan's extremely greedy eyes softened a little. The brains that had been penetrated by the mechanical cross had grown 4-legged mechanical legs, and metal plating had grown on the surface of the brains. They crawled on the ground autonomously, and there was even a tendency to self-destruct by sticking to the enemy's body. To a certain extent, there was a similarity between Mr. Newton and Professor Morgan in terms of creation. However, the two did not have much of a tendency to appreciate each other. They directly began to fight each other head-on, which was beyond common sense. Shattered brain matter and damaged metal were constantly scattered on the ground. At this moment, Eugenius also rushed over. "Nicholas, Sally, why are you here?" "Well, just enough to satisfy my unfulfilled wish in the ladybug game." When Eugenius noticed Han Dong, he smelled a long-lost opportunity. He couldn't wait to let Han Dong experience a wave of his brand-new abilities. He wanted to determine the winner again. He directly picked up the stone spear and charged forward. The eyeball in his mouth completely locked Han Dong. Just as he was about to get close to Han Dong, there was an additional aura in the air that symbolized sin. Due to the careless inhalation, it directly caused Eugenius' stomach to swell and expand, and he had unknowingly completed conception. At the same time, a black shadow flashed over, forcing Eugenius to hold the spear in front of him. Clang! A violent sound echoed in the underground area. Eugenius was kicked away by a black goat's hoof that fell from the side and hit the surface of a pillar in the temple. However, this kick was not important. Eugenius hurriedly reached out and inserted his hand into his abdomen, pulling out a baby that was still in gestation. This was the most dangerous thing. "Sally, are you going to block my way?" In the past, Eugenius was still slightly afraid of this black goat with a rich and unique bloodline. But after a series of transformations, he no longer had any fear. Swoosh! A big mouth that symbolized corpse eating formed in Eugenius' abdomen. At the same time, Han Dong also completed the drawing of the void array. This array could greatly increase one's perception of the void and could break through the brain's restrictions to teleport to the outside world. Don't even think about escaping. Eugenius activated the corpse-eating ritual and tried to bite the array to pieces before the other party could escape. Unexpectedly, Han Dong did not have time to activate it. The void array actually reacted on its own, and starlight shone. The next second, a young man with a starry sky head wearing the uniform of a great professor descended into the array. Bop! Eugenius was teammates with Bop in the Ladybug game and knew how terrifying this person was. At the same time, Bop's teacher was the reason why the Shug's family and he were in such a situation. It forced Eugenius to stop his attack. On the other side, Bop surveyed the battlefield as quickly as possible. When he saw the countless brains and the legendary Migo, he could not help but whisper the other party's name, Professor Francis Morgan. "You are indeed here." Bop understood what was happening here by reading the space particles here. At the same time, he signaled Nicholas with his eyes to prepare to leave. Bop personally activated the void array, and a large number of starlight particles rose from the ground. "Mr. Newton!" Following Han Dong's shout, Newton immediately got rid of the other party's entanglement and stepped into the teleportation array as quickly as possible. Whoosh! Everyone disappeared. Only Eugenius and Professor Morgan, who was slowly descending from the sky, were left in the burial ground. Although his greed for the brains was still there. However, there was a gratified look in his eyes. Sally, Bop, has he fully grown up now? Chapter 1641. Crunch, crunch. In the depths of the bone vault, the sound of meat being eaten could be heard. Eugene stood to the side with a respectful expression, watching his senior eat. Although he felt sorry for the living things being eaten, he was willing to do it. It was a repayment for the gift that the senior had given to the entire race. Professor Morgan was eating a special brain with a chrysanthemum-shaped opening at the top. Because he had swallowed such high-quality brains, he was able to quickly replenish the lost brain matter. The negative emotions of endless greed were also slowly disappearing. As expected of a technological race that could compete with my race in ancient times, the taste of their brains is still so unique. As compensation, I'll give you some researchers. That's right. The brain that Professor Morgan was eating was the ancient ones that Eugene voluntarily contributed from the Black Meat Mountain. It's okay, as long as you're satisfied. I've always wanted to thank you for your help to my race. This time, I'll fulfill my wish. Antarctica used to be quite chaotic. Because it was the main invasion point of the world cataclysm, the ancient ones had completely fallen, leaving only a few survivors. Because of the fall of the ancient ones, the social system had completely collapsed. The Shugus race that had been completely enslaved by the ancient ones was finally liberated. However, although they had obtained freedom, they didn't know how to use this freedom. At first, they only knew how to vent their desires, devouring the essence of the meat mountain, and recklessly carrying out the most disgusting metabolism. The Black Meat Mountain had once turned into a cesspool and garbage pit for the Shugus, until Professor Morgan from the University of Mishima visited to investigate the new species of hybrid demons. Because he despised the ancient ones. Therefore, he used special methods to control the Shugus and carefully taught them a sound social management system. Then, he turned the remaining ancient ones into slaves and carried out endless scientific research. He spent several years building the Black Meat Mountain into a Shugus society. Because of this, Eugene was able to receive the advanced ideas and technology education of the ancient ones since young. He maximized the heritage and technology of the 6 villages of the ancient ones in the Meat Mountain and grew into a unique existence. The brains of the ancient ones were eaten one by one. Professor Morgan's brain loss no longer existed. His whole body returned to a rational state. The brain tissue that covered the skeleton and Professor Morgan's entire body all gathered toward the half-open skull and was stored in a normal-sized cranial cavity. With a fleshy red main brain as the center, 6 different colored subbrains surrounded it. Apart from the neural connections and brain structure, it was actually somewhat similar to the structure of a star system. Regardless of whether it was the main brain or the subbrain, they were all responsible for important tasks and had completely different power systems. Any head that was separated and placed into a suitable body would become a powerful individual. Dr. Morgan had also completely returned to his original state as Migo's true state. Below the half-open cranial cavity that contained the brain was a slender and skinny body. 6 slender, wrinkled arms dangled from its knees. A tail covered with spiral patterns was dragging on the ground. It also had a pair of wings on its back that could be used for flight. Aside from the brain, it was just an ordinary Migo body. Moreover, this body was incomplete. Half of the waist and abdomen were missing, and even the soul had been bitten off. The surrounding wounds were also covered with small gears that were embedded in the flesh. They needed to be removed slowly. It was M.O. that had seriously injured him. The corpse-eating cult's ritual is enough to rank in the top 3 of the demonic book in terms of offensive power. Even if this ghoul hasn't fully comprehended it, it's still a huge threat. If it bites the brain, it'll be really bad. This is also something that can't be helped. Among the many old kings, only he fits this plan. Such an arrogant personality allowed me to have such a one-on-one opportunity. Although the price is high, it's all worth it. Professor Morgan had already detected the location of the land deed. He went down the secret passage. He came to the king-level land deed that was buried deep in the continent and supported the entire Zoxic continent. Although I didn't kill to obtain the right to the throne in one fell swoop, the land deed is enough. In this way, I can build my own ecological empire. I will prove to everyone that my research will touch the end of the truth. The world will be completely completed because of my research. The moment he touched the land deed, M.O.'s signature in the lower right corner was immediately replaced with Professor Morgan's name. Eugene, will you come with me? Okay. Professor Morgan created a living spaceship that could carry 2 people and provide a stable ecological environment on the spot. It flew straight out of Earth with the 2 people on it and flew toward an unknown planet in the depths of the universe. A special ecological prototype and a laboratory that belonged to Morgan had been established there. As long as the land deed was brought there, an independent ecological experiment circle could be formed. At the same time, because the land deed was taken away, this Ozoxic continent, which was isolated between the gaps of the world, no longer had a support point. The cracks in the earth quickly ran through the entire continent, carrying the ghouls that had not yet evacuated and turning them into food for the deep sea. On the biological spaceship, Professor Morgan was still very concerned about one thing. Eugene, you seem to know the special young man who is hiding in the bone depository? During the time I came to Zerbaha, I had been in a secret state. The only time I could be exposed was when I was accidentally swept by this person's fake magic eye. He is also proficient in the secret method of the void. Although he is not as good as Bop, he is more proficient in using it. At the same time, there is a special Migo fused in his brain. It is a special breed that even I have never seen before. There are many kinds of hybrid demons in his body, but there are human elements mixed in his soul. What is the background of this kid? Why is even an important person like Sally Hoof by his side? I have been in seclusion for the past 10 years, so I have never heard of any related information before. You are talking about Nicholas. He did suddenly rise in the past 10 years. It is normal that you have not heard of him. Eugene pretended to gnash his teeth. He really did not want to recall the deeds of Han Dong. But he still said what he knew. He just skipped the humiliating matter of him being defeated by Han Dong. What? He defeated the 10 primordial essence, and won the final victory of the London game. I remember that this generation of primordial should be the strongest generation after the New World was rebuilt, right? Even the young man who climbed out of the abyss of madness could defeat Bop and become the first primordial essence. He can actually get the first contribution? Well, Nicholas is quite special. There is a deep relationship between him and the Grey Walker. I also recently heard that after the London game, he went to Mishu University to apply for a teaching position. When he heard the 2 words, Mishu University, Professor Morgan's eyes flashed with a trace of uncontrollable hatred and madness. That is a pity. If I could have killed this kid just now, I could have studied his brain. It would have been very interesting. Chapter 1642. Whoosh. They shuttled through the rather stable void passage. The next second, under Bop's guidance, they went straight to the Egyptian area where Misha University was located. As long as they set foot in this area, they would be monitored by Misha University. No matter how bold that guy was, he wouldn't dare to chase after them. Once a dangerous entity, Like him who was marked by Misha University set foot on this land, the vice principal would personally descend to deal with him. When everyone got out, Han Dong also took the opportunity to put his arm on Bop's shoulder. "Bop, why are you here?" In fact, Han Dong really didn't know why a void formation he drew could summon Bop. He didn't tell anyone about this operation. But a small void explosion detonated on his shoulder, directly blowing up Han Dong's palm. Bop naturally could not reveal that he had been paying attention to Han Dong's whereabouts when he left the school. Instead, he said with a straight face, seriously, "Do you still remember what we talked about in the library about great contributions?" When he heard this, Han Dong's eyes widened. "Huh? It can't be that coincidental, right?" "It's really that coincidental. The matter about Francis Morgan involves Misha University's top secret. It's also the main target that I recruited you for. I'll talk to you in detail when we return to school. Our internal sources know that Morgan appeared in the Zoxic continent, so the organizer sent me to collect information. Who knew that you and Sally would be on the island? It's just that what happened in the Zoxic continent was far beyond our expectations. Things have become troublesome. The defeat of M.O., the sinking of the Zoxic continent, and the theft of the king-level land deed will spread throughout the righteous world in a short period of time. Our operation might be brought forward. I've already recommended you to the team. You have to meet the organizer as soon as possible. Okay, I still have something to deal with outside. I'll be back as soon as possible." Okay, at this moment, Bop's gaze was immediately attracted by a special human. A powerful human who could fight Professor Morgan head-on in the Bone Vault. Even Bop couldn't analyze the structure and operating principle of the knight armor on him in a short period of time. "Nicholas, who is this?" "Mr. Newton is in charge of the power core of the Holy City. He is the most basic technical support for our city." "Oh yes, then infinite energy. That played an important role in the London game was Mr. Newton's masterpiece." Bop had never been to a human main city. Although he had seen the strength of several peak human powerhouses in the London game. However, this was the first time he had seen a technological genius like Mr. Newton. Furthermore, it was related to endless energy. Bop was immediately interested. Bop accepted all intellectual talents, and there was no difference in treatment based on race. He took the initiative to extend his translucent starry right hand and shook Mr. Newton's rather cold right hand, which was between a flesh and a machine, wearing a leather glove. "Mr. Newton, are you interested in becoming a visiting scholar at the University of Mishu? I can be your referrer. As long as you do not violate the confidentiality agreement of the University of Mishima, the school will not impose too many restrictions on visiting scholars. Furthermore, there is a special portal for you to return to the human city." An unexpected gain. Mr. Newton carefully reviewed the relevant agreement, and after a detailed analysis of the pros and cons, he agreed. Although the cooperation with M.O. was not reached, if he could establish a knowledge exchange with the University of Mishima, he might be able to gain even more technological benefits. Furthermore, the path to M.O. was not completely cut off. The plan that Han Dong made at the Bone Vault had not been executed yet. If it really achieved the expected results, whether it was Mr. Newton or himself, they would receive much more technological support than expected. And everything in the plan would revolve around the mysterious Professor Morgan. And what made Han Dong happy was that the great contribution was also related to this. This way, everything could be linked together. "Nicholas, why don't you follow me back to the University of Mishima now and meet the organizers in advance? I think the level of the organizers is at least mythical. I think some of them should have some prejudice against me, right? Since the operation hasn't started yet, why don't you give me some time to improve and try to leave a better first impression when we meet? Up to you, but because of the Zoxic continent, the operation might be brought forward at any time. As he said that, Bop reached out his hand and drew a void beacon on Han Dong's body. If the operation enters the preparatory stage, I'll come and find you personally. Okay. Just like that. The team split into two groups. Bop led Mr. Newton to the University of Mishima. Han Dong, on the other hand, had something else to do, so Sally chose to stay by his side. But before they set off, Sally said with some worry, "From what Bop said just now, you seem to be participating in a rather dangerous event. When I was studying, I heard rumors of the Great Contribution. It's usually a mythical body, a dangerous event that only senior professors can handle. Is it really appropriate for you to be involved now?" Han Dong suddenly turned around and stroked Sally's horns with one hand. He said solemnly, "Don't worry. There's not much time left. If I can't seize the opportunity in front of me, when the real danger comes, I'm afraid I won't even have the ability to protect myself. Sally, you have to seize every minute and second to improve yourself. There will be a rather dangerous event in about 5 or 10 years. If there's news from the Black Forest, tell me immediately. Come to think of it, if Mother can recover, it will be of great benefit to you. Yes, by the way, you said there's something outside? Are you going back to the human main city?" "No. Meeting Mr. Newton once is enough. I have to further my studies in the remaining time. Sally, do you know where the crowmen's nest is?" "Skeetas, I know this. This place is much better than the stinky, rotten continent of Zoxic. Let's go, we can go directly through the nearest hybrid demon teleportation point." The news of the Zoxic continent spread throughout the world. As it involved the traitor, Francis Morgan, the University of Mishima was also under great pressure. The vice principal couldn't sit still. He directly contacted the special team that had been secretly formed and asked for the date of the operation to be brought forward. The school's Ministry of Foreign Affairs also spent a large amount of money to prevent the subsequent spread and ferment of the matter as much as possible. However, M.O.'s defeat also attracted the direct attention of many of the old Lower Kings. The old Lower Kings, as well as some powerful forces hidden in the dark, began to take the initiative to collect information about Morgan. They even directly sent exploration teams to investigate remote unknown planet. Some of the larger and more famous neutral cities had even issued the highest level of bounty on their head. As long as they could bring back the traitor's corpse, they would receive a huge reward. However, the higher-level existences didn't interfere. They didn't even care about the destruction of the Zoxic continent, only silently watching all of this. Chapter 1643. The Incident of Traitor Francis Morgan was still brewing in the dark side of the world. Many organizations were even willing to pay a high price to purchase relevant information from various black markets and neutral cities, completely ignoring the attitude of the University of Mishima. Finally, 20 days before the final exams, under pressure from the outside world, the school requested the operation team responsible for this incident to begin before the end of the semester. University of Mishima Complex Teleportation Room, Buzz. As the teleportation door expanded, 3 figures appeared at the same time. Their bodies were more or less stained with crow feathers, especially Han Dong. Upon closer inspection, part of Han Dong's body was indeed covered with crow feathers, but the other part came from himself, especially his left arm, which was covered with crow feathers that carried the aura of death. But under Han Dong's control, these crow feathers automatically retracted under his skin. The journey to Skeetas was very smooth. Han Dong did not rely on his title of associate professor. As soon as he arrived, he was personally received by the crow god. After all, the two of them had interacted before, and when Han Dong stepped into the forest, he resonated with the crow god. During the time he was in Crow Mountain, Han Dong's development in the path of dark magic could be said to be leaps and bounds ahead. because of the vice principal's teachings, with the crow as the catalyst, he soared into the sky with his accumulated knowledge. Even on the stone tablet at the bottom of the abyss, the outline of a mythical puzzle had been engraved, like a crow standing on something. The specifics would only be known after the puzzle was completed. Due to the issue of time, Pope followed the mark he left behind and took the initiative to go to Crow Mountain in Skeetas. When he reached the peak of the Raven Mountain and saw Han Dong sitting on the raven tree, he was shocked. A beautiful image was reflected in his mind. Perhaps he would not be able to forget it for a long time. Han Dong was in a meditative state, floating in the air. Because he did not restrict his body in any way, combined with the unique state of his consciousness, the aura of death that overflowed from his body automatically formed a pair of exaggerated crow wings on his back, reaching a width of almost 100 meters. Whether it was the outline of the wings, the color and shape of each feather, or the aura of death that was emitted as a whole, it could be said to be flawless. As for Han Dong, with the support of the floating corpse internal sutra, he naturally floated between heaven and earth, with the divine crow tree and the stars in the sky as his background. Such a beautiful scene was deeply imprinted in Bop's mind. Bop looked at Sally and said tactfully, "Miss Sally, I'm going to bring Han Dong to meet a special group. This matter involves the highest secrets of the secret university, so it's really inconvenient for me to bring you along." I know. You guys go ahead. I've already made an agreement with Sister Kuji in advance. As soon as I go back to school, I'll have a special dual cultivation with her. Speaking of which, Sally placed her hands on Han Dong's shoulders, tiptoed slightly, and whispered into his ear. "I'll wait for your return." Yes. Since Han Dong had not been officially listed as a member of the operation team, the meeting place was also set at the Deep Space Hotel in the Fallen Pit. On the way to the hotel, Bop also reminded them. "The people you're about to meet are all senior professors. They have contributed greatly to the University of Mishima. The main purpose of the meeting later is to conduct a simple review of you as a pre-selected member. Pay attention." Okay. Han Dong himself was also very curious as to what kind of existence this small group of people was that Bop attached such importance to. Beep beep. When the hotel room door opened, 3 completely different auras swept over at the same time. Or the auras contained trivial, ancient language. When Han Dong smelled the auras, all kinds of strange language directly echoed in his brain. Or a mixed fragrance that made people feel comfortable, but mixed with a trace of strange aura, invisibly weakened Han Dong's consciousness defense line. The most powerful aura was the tremor that came from the front. When he felt this aura, it was as if his soul was violently trembling. Very strong. Peak of the mythical level. Or has he reached the king level? The source of the tremor. It was the middle-aged professor who was sitting in front of the fireplace with worm tissues scattered around the ground. Considering the limited space in the hotel, he had tried to hide his body as much as possible. The unlimited amount of meat was compressed together, forming an extremely terrifying circular muscle layer. The mouth was in the shape of a 4-petaled mouth, filled with sharp teeth. Han Dong immediately thought of a certain high-tier hybrid demon race, a Bole also known as the Star Driller. The professor before him was obviously a very special existence among the Bole worms. Other than that, the aura conveyed the origin of the ancient language, corresponding to the fat professor on the bed in the guest room. His huge belly was raised high, making him look very lazy. However, the hair that covered his body was pink. The most exaggerated was the exaggerated mouth that took up half of his face. The mouth was filled with densely packed pink tentacles, some of which even protruded out of the mouth. It was the friction between these tentacles that formed the ancient language that was transmitted invisibly. When he saw Han Dong enter the room, he immediately retracted all the pink tentacles into his mouth and revealed a kind smile. Han Dong had seen the corresponding species of this professor in the Dreamlands before. It was a special hybrid demon called the Moonbeast. It was Han Dong's first time seeing a moonbeast in the real world, and it was such a high-level existence. The third professor leaned against the window, half of his body covered by a curtain. He emitted a faint fragrance and the smell of various medicines. The exposed parts of his body and the tail that fell to the ground were covered in milky white snake scales. The special snake eyes hidden behind the curtain were carefully observing Han Dong. At this time, Pope, who acted as the middleman, started the introductions. "Teachers, let me introduce you. This is the person I recommended, Warren Nicholas, as the main participant in the Lazoxic incident. He has a lot of information that the outside world does not know. At the same time, he has already made direct contact with our target. Nicholas. This is Dean William Dale, Bullworm, the person in charge of the School of Geology and the organizer of this operation." Hearing the title of Dean, Han Dong naturally understood why this person was so powerful. Leaning against the window is Director Karen City, Naga, a pharmaceutical professor and the secret apothecary of this operation. The last one is Warren Rice, Moonbeast, a professor of ancient languages and the decryptor of this operation. Before Han Dong could say anything, the dean spoke. The organizer, Dean William Dale, spoke directly. To be able to survive as a core participant in the Zoxic incident means that you have some ability. However, it is not enough to be the basic requirement to join us. Tell us in detail about your experience and information in the Zoxic incident. Due to the lack of time, if the information you provide is valuable, we will let you join us without the assessment. Chapter 1644. No wonder Bop is so cautious about this matter. His attitude is also quite proper. This group of professors is indeed very strong. Organizer, William Dale, the current dean of the School of Geology. Based on his aura alone, he should be at the same level as Traitor, Francis Morgan. However, due to the limited number of kings or some other reasons, he has yet to become an old king. The other two, Professor of Ancient Languages, Warren Rice, and Professor of Pharmacy, Karen City. They have completed the construction of mythical puzzles and are at the sub-king level. The main thing is that they have unique characteristics. They must have been famous geniuses in the hybrid demon world when they were young. It's really interesting to be able to team up with such strong people. I should be able to learn a lot. No wonder the qualification check is so strict. Every member has a precise positioning to ensure that the overall coordination of the team is maintained at a high level, and no one will be a burden to the team. Han Dong also had a good impression of these hybrid demons who focused on scientific research. He corrected his attitude as a junior and seriously recounted his experience in the Zoxic continent. When the story told about Han Dong's first trip to capital, Zulbaha, and the mysterious person suspected to be Morgan at the edge of the burial area, the organizer, Dean Dale, immediately raised his doubts. It was also his first contact with Han Dong. He planned to use this conversation to get to know this young man. "Your eyes can see through that guy's disguise?" "I just caught a glimpse of the abnormality, and didn't completely see through it. It's easy to ignore it. It's quite impressive to be able to catch the abnormality." Francis Morgan's disguise is almost ranked first among the professors of Mishu University. His creature creation can be used perfectly on himself. As long as he fuses the local ghouls with his body, he can easily sneak into the Zoxic continent without being discovered. In addition, his brain can form an invisible interference field at all times. Any detection that gets close to his brain will be weakened and misled. These 2 points are why can't discover him. Let's test your vision. If it's true, your eyes may increase the success rate of our operation. I'll give you 3 seconds to examine me and see what you can see. 3. As he counted down, Deandale also turned around. It revealed the circular muscle structure of his body, as well as his rather old and solemn face. Han Dong didn't wait for the countdown to end. He directly gave the results that the demonic eye had seen. In Deandale's abdominal cavity, there seems to be a cuboid. At this point, Deandale was shocked and hurriedly interrupted. Enough. I've read your information in private. You should have studied the Book of Necromancy, I part copy. However, the fake eye provided by the copy alone shouldn't have such an effect. During one of my explorations in the Destiny realm, I accidentally obtained a special eyeball from a powerful enemy, which gave me a special vision ability. My demonic eye has already far surpassed the level described in the manuscript. Han Dong opened the magic eye between his eyebrows, and a black vortex that was beyond the knowledge of the professor was revealed. Not bad, continue. Han Dong described how he had snuck into the bone depository, spied on the entire process of Professor Morgan defeating M.O., and the subsequent escape experience. Deandale had actually completely acknowledged this young man in his heart, and they had obtained a lot of new information based on Han Dong's description. For example, the terrifying stance he had displayed when he defeated M.O., as well as the negative emotions that he couldn't control. However, Deandale noticed a problem and used it as the key to this assessment. There's only one question. You speculated that the target was at the quasi-king level and even took the initiative to find M.O. As an atavistic body, why didn't you choose to escape? Why did you decide to continue going deeper? Han Dong didn't explain much, such as that he had fought against a king or that he had life-saving means. He only smiled and asked in return, if it were any of you, would you really give up the opportunity to pry into the truth and decisively escape when you finally touched upon the true conspiracy of the incident? Sometimes, curiosity and thirst for knowledge were equivalent to each other. I believe that if any of you teachers were present, you would make the same choice as me. When Han Dong gave this answer, the faint red aura that seeped out from his words was noticed by the ancient language professor, Warren Rice, who was lying on the bed. When he analyzed the madness attribute in it, he suddenly connected it to the terrifying abyss at the center of the universe. As expected of a teacher from Mishima University. You have passed the assessment and officially joined this special operation as an assistant between the team as the Life Faculty, Associate Professor. Pope should have already told you. This operation is a top-secret mission recognized by Mishima University. If it is carried out smoothly, one or even both of us may receive the school's biggest commendation, great contribution. Pope will tell you the details of the operation's target, traitor, Professor Francis Morgan, and the details of the operation. Due to the outbreak of the Zoxic Continent incident, the school has already moved ahead. We will depart in 2 days. I hope you will be ready by then. We still have some information to submit to the school. You should go back and prepare. Okay. When Han Dong and Pope left one after another, Dean no longer dared to speak. Deandale no longer held back and immediately revealed a part of his true form as a giant devourer worm, filling up half the room. As expected of the winner of the London game. I didn't expect that just atavism could reach such a level, especially the eye. In addition, he has already been in contact with Morgan, so he should be able to pinpoint his location more accurately. With him joining us, we might be able to find the new world that Morgan created faster. Professor Warren, Professor Karen, what do you think of this young man? Professor Karen, who was covered in snake scales and hidden behind the curtains, said in a feminine tone, "The rumors are true. He is comparable to a mythical entity and is of a very high standard. His brain is completely unaffected by the hallucinogen. No wonder he could survive in front of Morgan. Very good, I personally look forward to this little guy's future performance. However, Warren, who was lying on the bed with a huge belly and pink tentacles in his mouth, had a slightly different opinion. Since you all acknowledge this young associate professor, I won't talk about his merit. You have to be careful. Nicholas's body is mixed with the madness of the abyss. If it becomes uncontrollable, it might affect our overall operation. If necessary, we have to exclude him during key operations. Madness. I will pay attention. Also, Pope will keep an eye on him. Chapter 1645. Bop did not want to waste time on booking a private room. He led Han Dong to the main building of the physics department and went straight to the well-sealed, void laboratory. The equipment inside the laboratory. Han Dong, a biology professor, had never seen it before. However, he could roughly guess that it was a series of devices used to condense space particles, as well as space oscillators or generators. Since the operation was brought forward, Bop had to shut down all the equipment today to minimize the damage. While fiddling with the equipment, he explained the details of the operation to Han Dong. This operation is classified as top secret by the university. Other than us, only a few higher-ups know about it. No information about the operation is to be leaked, including Sally. Even if she accidentally bumped into Grimm, she is not allowed to reveal anything. Okay. The ultimate goal of the operation is to find traitor Francis Morgan's hiding place in the universe, suppress, seal, and bring him back to the university. Capture him alive? That's right. Due to Morgan's uniqueness, it is almost impossible to kill him. If we bring him back alive, not only will we be able to restore the reputation of the university, but we will also be able to realize the greatest value of his life. As for the seal, there is no need to worry. When Morgan was expelled from the university, including the vice principal, all the regent-level executives were analyzing his unique biological body and creating a special sealing device to deal with him. As long as we can suppress him to a certain extent through attacks, we can seal him perfectly. Compared to killing him, it is much easier. However, the most difficult part now is to find Morgan's real hiding place in the universe and determine the hidden dangers. Due to what happened in the Zoxic continent, many forces in the universe, even some of the lower Wangdu, have issued a bounty to find Morgan's exact location. When Han Dong heard this, he eagerly asked the question he wanted to know the most. Bop, can you tell me more about this Professor Morgan? Why was he labeled as a traitor? What happened behind the scenes? At this point, Bop temporarily put down the work in his hands. The speed of the planets in the starry brain also slowed down. It seemed a little melancholy. Sally should have told you before. When we were studying, Professor Morgan was our teacher. I hadn't left the void for long, and my way of looking at individuals was rather simple. In my eyes, Professor Morgan was similar to teacher in some ways. He had devoted his entire life to one thing. Personally, I admire this kind of person. This kind of focus and single-mindedness often supported them to reach unreachable heights on a certain path. However, Professor Morgan was too extreme. He did not care about other people's feelings when he was researching in the field of biology. They even ignored the warnings of the school rules and made many examples. They were even related to some disgusting things, which seriously affected the school's reputation. Ignoring the teaching arrangements was one thing. Once Professor Morgan determines a certain experimental material, he will use all means to plunder it. This seems to be related to his nature. Once he needs a certain material, he can't suppress the negative emotions in his body. Nature. Han Dong remembered it very clearly. Professor Morgan, who was suffering from brain damage, was in a greedy state when he discovered the swollen doctor. Initially, he would often travel to different parts of the universe to collect materials for his experiments. Sometimes he would even rob or kill, causing quite a bit of trouble for Mishima University. However, the worst thing was, It was also the thing that caused him to be labeled as a dangerous entity and traitor. It came from the heinous things he did on Mishima University's campus. According to his own explanation during the trial, it was to achieve the final goal of the current stage of the experiment that he carried out the cruel killings on campus. After he failed to negotiate with the vice dean of the life faculty, Marvell Blaine, he brutally murdered him. At the same time, he killed 3 professors and 9 students to use as supplementary materials for the experiment. Furthermore, even after the negative emotions were removed, he showed no remorse. Because according to him, the experiment was a success, and these people's forced sacrifice was worth it. He killed so many people on campus. The vice dean, 3 professors, and students. Was this guy consumed by madness? Bop replied in a low voice, "This is why I hate lunatics, and you are no exception, Nicholas. Our relationship is only limited to our school colleagues and this operation. If one day you do something as crazy as this, I'll kill you without mercy." Han Dong did not seem to mind. Instead, he said with a pleading tone, "Then I'll have to trouble you, Bop. If such a time comes, you have to kill me with your own hands." For a moment, the atmosphere in the lab became slightly strange. Until Bop replied coldly, "Reduce your contact with Green. At least you look normal now." Han Dong laughed to cover up the awkwardness and returned to the topic. "Haha. Speaking of which, since Professor Morgan was put on trial by you guys and committed such a serious crime, he should be executed immediately, right? How did it become like this? Logically speaking, with so many elites in Mishima University, it should be impossible for him to escape, right? Just the vice dean alone can stop time with his death. The execution was inevitable. The forces behind the victims all stopped the observers from coming to the school. They worked together with the school to ensure that the execution went smoothly. Everyone at the scene saw Professor Morgan being executed in the deepest part of the basement. After that, the body was checked to ensure that Morgan was completely dead. But, on the second day after the body was sealed in the blasphemy cellar, something happened that shocked the entire school. When the guards were conducting a routine inspection of the cellar, Morgan's body was gone. At the same time, the bodies of the evildoers in the blasphemy cellar also disappeared. Hearing this, Han Dong was shocked. Could this be the result of Professor Morgan's experiment? No wonder Bob said that this person was hard to kill. I even suspect that Professor Morgan knew the execution process of Mishima University and purposely allowed himself to be captured. His goal was to use the identity of a corpse to enter the blasphemy cellar to steal more valuable experiment materials. Yes, the school also guessed this later. Since then, Professor Morgan has completely disappeared. Mishima University did not announce this to the public. They have been secretly searching for clues. Until a while ago, when they received some news, Dean Dale became the organizer and established this special team. Who would have thought that Morgan would cause such a huge commotion the moment he appeared? This led to the dead, who had a grudge against Morgan or the old Wangdu behind him, to start searching for him. I see. Right, Bop, your teacher, the one in the void, he should know about the movements in the world, right? As the headmaster of Mishima University, it should be easy for him to find the traitor, right? Most of the time, the teacher will not personally interfere with something. In fact, the teacher has already seen the ending of this matter. Perhaps if he does not interfere, the ending will be better. Understood, Nicholas, get ready. The danger level of this mission is no less than the London game. We will be facing an existence that can directly defeat M.O. in the enemy's territory. Furthermore, we will be stepping into the special ecosystem that he has created. To be honest, I can't wait. Chapter 1646. 2 days of rest and recuperation. Unlike the other members of his team, Han Dong did not rely on meditation, or medicine to reach his peak condition. Instead, he chose to contact Sally. Sure enough, when the consciousness was connected, she was having a special dual cultivation with Professor Kuji. Combining the domain between the two, as well as the reproductive characteristics of the black goat, and integrating the artistic conception into it, they created a pseudo-dense forest. The trees in the forest were mainly divided into two types. One was the black trees that symbolized Sally. Most of them were in the shape of a woman's body. There were also many openings on the surface of their bodies, from which mucus constantly flowed out. The other type was the white trees that symbolized Kuji. They were in the form of a normal tree, but they were extremely soft to the touch. It felt like the tender skin of a young girl. If one squeezed or sucked on the protrusions on the branches, they could also taste a refreshing liquid that numbed one's consciousness, aroused desire, and provided a healing effect. When Han Dong stepped into the forest created by the two women, the soft female voice and the sound of soft objects colliding and rubbing echoed in the forest, quickly transmitted into Han Dong's mind. Following the direction of the flow of psychedelic colors, he would find the source of the sound in the center of the forest. Both of them turned into the black goat's body. The huge bodies were stacked together, and the soft white balls were placed on the surface of the purple-black furred meatballs. The dark purple tentacles and the milky white tentacles with purple spots intertwined and were close to each other. They even inserted their tentacles into the mouths or small holes on the surface of the bodies, carrying out the unique dual cultivation ritual of the Black Forest. While the suppressed desire was released, their consciousness was connected to each other, and they were able to comprehend deeper knowledge. When Han Dong approached, he immediately attracted the attention of the two women. The swollen meat balls quickly came to Han Dong's side under the weight of the goat's hooves, and squeezed him in the middle. The texture of the meatballs was fundamentally different. It was impossible to say which one was better, but the feeling brought by the combination of the two was impossible to surpass. Even Han Dong completely let down his guard, allowing his body to be held by the meatballs, and joined this special black goat dual cultivation session as a third party. For an entire day and night, Han Dong also received the best mental and physical nourishment between the dream and reality. When he woke up, he rested his head on Sally's lap. His lower body rested on Professor Kuji's soft body. When the special wool was attached to the skin, it would increase the sense of touch by several times. It was both comfortable and refreshing. If such a scene were to spread within the school, Han Dong might become the public enemy. Many male hybrid demons in the school were interested in Kuji, who was soft, gentle, and specialized in healing. Many of them had failed in their attempts to woo her. "Nicholas, isn't it comfortable?" Even though Professor Kuji had woken up, she still maintained her sleeping position, letting Han Dong lay on her upper body. "I heard from Sally that you're about to carry out an event that involves great contributions? I've heard a little about it among the school's higher-ups, but I don't know the specifics. However, danger is inevitable. Events that are related to great contributions are often things that even the University of Mishima has trouble dealing with." "Yes, but I should be able to return safely." Kuji was also curious, so she continued to ask. The incident itself should be classified as top secret. However, the information about the execution team should be open to the public, right? Other than Bop, who are the other professors in the team? Let's see if I'm familiar with any of them. Dean William Dale is the organizer. Dean Dale is leading the team personally? In this case, the danger will be minimized. You're really good to win such a team. Who else is there? Professor of Ancient Languages, Warren Rice, and Professor of Pharmacy, Karen City. Kuji wanted to talk about Warren, the special Luna Beast. But when Karen's name came out, her expression changed at once. Her gentle tone turned serious. "Nicholas, you must be careful of Karen. I really don't understand why Dean Dale wants her to join the operation. Is your target an existence that is extremely difficult to kill and is quite outstanding in terms of life? Well, is there anything special about this professor? I just smelled a hallucinogenic medicinal fragrance from her body. Han Dong recalled. When Professor Karen met in the hotel, she deliberately hid her body behind the curtain. Out of etiquette, Han Dong didn't pry directly. Only a small part of her body covered with snake scales and a long, white-scaled snake tail were exposed. Although this woman belongs to the pharmaceutical school, the title of professor is just in name. She used to be the executioner of the University of Mishima. Later, she was transferred for special reasons and stayed in the pharmaceutical school to work. However, she seems to be doing things related to assassination. Whenever it involved the execution of serious offenders, it was inseparable from this woman. If you do anything against the rules during the operation, she may even execute you on the spot. Be careful. At this point, a connection connected the relevant information in Kuji's brain. Led by a king-level dean, the team included an executioner and a special professor of ancient languages. Kuji suddenly thought of something. Could it be that your goal is, don't die? That lunatic is very dangerous. Mother is still waiting for you to go back and help her recover her body. Don't worry, I have already made contact with the target. I can roughly estimate the level of danger. It will be fine. Professor Kuji and Sally, wait for our good news in the school. If there is really danger, I will voluntarily give up the mission. He washed off the fragrant mucus on his body. Han Dong, who changed into a bird-beak doctor costume, went directly to the teleportation network of the University of Mishima to meet the other members of the team. When Dean Dale saw the young man again, he was a little surprised. He found that his whole body had a kind of skin change. Not only was his skin much fairer, but it was even smoother. His condition was even better than the others. Nicholas, you seem to be in good condition. The rest time was short, so I couldn't do anything, so I slept with a friend for 2 days. By the way, where should we start looking? Does Dean Dale have any clues about the suspected location of the target? Or which star sector? The clues were basically zero. Even though the spies outside the school had been trying to track down Morgan, there was no clue to his hiding place. It was as if he had been hiding in a space crack ever since he left Missy University. He had never come out from his hiding place. However, due to the recent M.O. incident that had caused a lot of commotion, many large organizations and the old Wangdu were secretly investigating. Looking at it from different angles, they might find some unexpected clues. Also, Morgan, who got the king-level land deed, will definitely make other moves in the near future. Let's first go to the largest neutral city in the universe, Arkham. We might find some useful clues there. Chapter 1647. Arkham, the largest neutral city in World S01, also known as the World City. Any life form could enter and leave the city freely. However, once one stepped into this tolerant city, one would have to follow the rules and not cross the line. Although the rules of a neutral city were relatively lax, however, Arkham had a set of hidden rules. Once someone failed to follow them or broke the rules in certain matters, they would be devoured by the city. That's right. Throughout history, there were many people who tried to cause trouble in Arkham, or some fugitives who tried to seek refuge in Arkham, but they all disappeared without a trace. Because of this, there were many scary legends circulating around Arkham City. These legends that spread through the streets and alleys, coupled with the real cases of missing people, made the originally chaotic hybrid demon city orderly. Of course, such a large, tolerant, and business-oriented city would naturally have a behind-the-scenes manager. It was rumored that there were at least 5 old kings behind Arkham City, and some of them were even middle-level existences. They all restricted each other and set up a management system for the city. Once Arkham City was threatened or had a large disturbance, it might attract the old king's personal arrival. The group went through a large teleportation circle and crossed half the universe to reach the star sector where Arkham City was located. This largest neutral city was built on a planet with a similar ecosystem to Earth. It was also a single star and ensured that the temperature difference between day and night would not exceed 40 degrees Celsius. This planet was also named Arkham because of the city. So, the group appeared on the planet's surface, a farm less than 5 kilometers away from Arkham City. There were all sorts of strange-looking fruits growing here. A living truck was harvesting the fruits in the farm, and after it was filled, it would be sent to Arkham City. Bop asked, "Nicholas, you don't come to the outer star sector often, right?" "If the Black Forest doesn't count, this is my first time going to an outer planet managed by the hybrid demons. Let me give you a simple explanation. Since Arkham's scale was about 15% of the planet's total area, it had a very tolerant management system, and the number of hybrid demons active on the planet was maintained at 100 billion. Because of that, the rest of the planet was converted into farms to supply Arkham with enough resources, especially food. Arkham's internal structure and system will be beyond your imagination. Its existence is enough to represent the perfect understanding of the order of the mantis demons, and it can directly express its diversity. However, we shouldn't stay for too long. Once we confirm the information, we will leave. I'll give you a special warning. The reason why Arkham was able to remain as a neutral and lawless city for tens of thousands of years, becoming the largest neutral city in the universe, was mainly because of the terrifying existence in the dark. Try not to act alone. If you run into trouble, you'll waste a lot of time. Yes. He looked in the direction of the farm truck. A few kilometers away, Arkham City was shrouded in a thick fog. It could even be said that the fog had divided the entire planet. There was no end to it. Also, since they were all famous professors at Mishima University, it was easy for them to recognize each other. In order to conceal their identities, everyone used different methods to disguise themselves. Deendale, on the other hand, was quite simple. He simply covered his body in a dark gold robe and had a worm tail that was several meters long that resembled a rock stratum behind him. Overall, he looked like a normal worm traveler. Professor Warren disguised himself as a very common Luna beast. He had a white and round belly, and pink tentacles that seeped out from his mouth hung in front of his chest. His rather cute eyes stared in front of him. Anyone who tried to read his body would be affected by the whispers, and give him false information. It was almost impossible for his identity to be exposed. As for Professor Karen from the pharmacy school, she was a bit special. It was unknown if it was intentional or not. As a Naga, she actually used her snake scales to camouflage herself into a slender white-haired woman, and she also had a delicate oriental face. The only characteristic of a snake that it retained was its flexible white tail that dragged behind its back. Half of her body was also wrapped in a gray cloak. Her slender white legs were almost completely exposed as she stepped barefoot on the ground. This image made Han Dong take a few more glances. However, when he recalled Kuji's warning, he immediately looked away. She used to be the executioner of Mishima University, the executioner. Due to the successful London game, humans have been reaccepted by the world. Moreover, some hybrid demons like to disguise themselves as humans. Professor Karen should be a normal disguise and not intentional. Just as Han Dong was looking for an excuse, suddenly, he felt a pair of cold eyes staring at him. He knew very well that Professor Karen was staring at him, but he didn't know the specific reason. In order to get rid of the discomfort, he had to put his arm on Bop's body. Who knew? When Han Dong put his hand on Bop's, he realized that Bop was also disguised as a human. It was exactly the same as his appearance in the Ladybug game room. Starry Sky's head was replaced with a young and mature face. His hair was shining with a bright luster, and his eyes were in a deep space state. Bop, this is your disguise? The human skin is quite useful. It's light, clean, and not easy to be noticed. Haha, okay. Han Dong continued to wear his bird mask. All he needed to do was to conceal his aura. Just like that, the team headed towards Arkham. When they stepped into the mist, all their senses were suppressed to the minimum. Even the demon eye was limited to a few meters. Who knew that there were no city walls? After passing through 100 meters of the mist, they stepped onto the streets of Arkham. Due to the nature of a neutral city, there was no need for city walls. What kind of material is this street made of? Han Dong lowered his head and looked at the gray street under his feet. Its hardness was between rock and rubber, slightly harder. The street had a rather ridiculous self-cleaning ability. No matter what kind of garbage, liquid or solid, once the street recognized it as non-material, it would be sucked into the underground pipeline in a short period of time and transported to the underground garbage factory for classification and disposal. There were also strange tall buildings on both sides of the street. Some were shaped like conches. There were even seawater seeping out of the street to ensure the humidity around the buildings. Some were enlarged organs that emitted a strong smell of blood. There were also postmodernist buildings that were beyond comprehension. They were made of special rocks and some kind of biological hard skin stitched together. Wait, the street in front of them alone contained more than 20 different hybrid demon cultures. They seemed to be incompatible and even repelled, but they were closely connected to each other and became a part of the city. Let's go directly to the information port. There might be clues we want there. Chapter 1648. Due to the size of Arkham. Naturally, there were many different modes of transportation, and at the same time there were many private transportation. However, even though private transportation was relatively cheap, there were many traps and traps. For some travelers who came to Arkham for the first time, they would be secretly taken to unknown dark areas. Killing people was a common occurrence in Arkham. Unless the person killed was an important person, no one would care at all. Let's go underground. Under Dean Dale's suggestion, the team boarded an express demon bug train that was embedded in the Earth's crust. After paying the fare, they would receive a one-time use carrier membrane. Once the membrane was placed on the body, it could be directly absorbed into the demon bug's body cavity through organic affinity. The internal space was also artificially modified. There was a relatively comfortable bug egg holding device. As long as the body was placed on it, the bug egg would extend out a strip to hold the body in place. Additionally, the train's bug skin was also ground into a translucent state, allowing the passengers to observe the situation outside. The first half of the journey was a tunnel that reached a terrifying speed of 1,000 kilometers per hour. About 10 minutes later, the demon bug burrowed out of the Earth's crust and arrived at a special oceanic area. That's right, this was the area corresponding to the information port. Due to Arkham's size covering 1/5 of the planet, it also included an oceanic area. During the construction of the city, Zhonghai had also undergone corresponding modifications and became the famous information port. Most of the information in the universe would appear here. Perhaps there was a special organization behind the scenes that gathered all the information here, or perhaps it was the result of natural evolution. As Arkham's reputation grew and Arkham's overall size surpassed other neutral cities, many of the more famous intelligence organizations, bounty organizations, and assassination organizations paid a high price to enter the information port, making it the center of the universe's information gathering. According to statistics, 38% of the tourists that came to Arkham had the information port as their final destination. When the demon bug train entered the oceanic area, as the guard of the deep-sea messenger, Han Dong also felt it. Even though the city sea, was part of the deep sea and was under the control of some great being. Many deep-sea creatures swam around here. Among them, there was a creature that looked like a squid but had a round head. Through the movement of its tentacles, it quickly stuck to the demonic bug train. Their compound eyes seemed to be able to see through the skin and stare at the passengers inside. Then, they took out special bone flutes from their body cavities and stuck them on the skin of the train to play strange notes. Many passengers had taken out headgear that could isolate the music in advance to ensure that they would not be affected. Once their consciousness invaded, they would have a strong urge to jump into the sea and jump out of the train to become food for these creatures. Of course, Han Dong and the others did not need it at all. No matter how strange the sound of the flute was, it had no effect on the 5 of them. Han Dong even heard a familiar flavor from it. It was somewhat similar to the terrifying flute sound that came from the stone door in Grimm's body that led to the center of chaos. Of course, the level of the two was completely different. There was a difference of several or even dozens of levels. Han Dong immediately followed the melody of the flute and began to shake his shoulders rhythmically. A short while later, an information port that swam in the ocean revealed itself. The overall scale was similar to the conventional capital of a human city. The bottom of the information port was covered with huge octopus tentacles that slowly wriggled forward in the deep sea. Although Arkham would not check the identity of outsiders. However, as an important area between the cities, the information port must be checked for the identity of the visitors. Usually, a body fluid verification was used. A tube of body fluid was extracted and sent to the information database for comparison to ensure that the individual's character was above the passing line and that they were not wanted by large forces or the Old King before entering the information port. When everyone approached, Dean Dale directly showed the Misha University badge to the staff. The other party's tentacles all straightened and let them pass with respect. There are several intelligence stations located here. In order to save time, we'll split up and try to inquire about any kind of intelligence station. Once we find something, we'll share it through the consciousness network. Considering that it's Nicholas's first time here and his level is the lowest, Pope, you'll go with him. Okay. Just like that, the team split into 4 and headed in different directions of the information port. Among them, Professor Karen dragged her snake tail and turned directly into a damp alley. She even went straight to the underground area through a secret door. She directly started the investigation from the dark side of the information port. Obviously, she was quite familiar with this place. Nicholas, you just need to follow me. Most of the shops here are low-end intelligence shops. There's no need to waste time at all. Besides, I have a group of very reliable friends here. Okay. Although Han Dong followed Pope, his eyes were trying to collect as much information as possible about the information port. Most of the shops mainly sell intelligence. There are also some peddlers hiding in the shadows who will take the initiative to solicit customers. At the same time, there are also some shops that offer rewards. You can entrust the other party to do things for you. You can also apply to become a worker to make money. There are even intelligence auctions, which should be auctioned according to the rarity and keywords. This kind of intelligence often involves some treasure locations or a certain hybrid demon who carries treasures. Well, what is this? While the demon eye scanned the street, it accidentally caught a strange aura. The dark gray aura came from the depths of a certain alley. The aura would even construct a strange distorted face, telling some vague words. Pope, is this also selling intelligence? Following Han Dong's guidance, Pope frowned slightly. I didn't pay attention to this kind of place when I came here before. However, shops like this in the corner are often special intelligence stations that exist in the dark side. Professor Karen should have inquired about this kind of place. However, this aura is different from the intelligence stations I have seen in the dark side. Let's take a look later. Okay. Just as Han Dong was about to move his gaze away, he accidentally noticed that someone seemed to be staring at him in the alley, and a very uncomfortable feeling hit his heart. When the demon eye scanned him again, the feeling of being stared at disappeared immediately. Under Pope's lead, the two came to the middle of the information port. A special building floated in the air like a star, corresponding to the large-scale, void intelligence station. The scale of this intelligence station was enough to rank in the top 3 in the information port. The hybrid demons who entered here more or less held some financial power. The person in charge was the same teacher as Pope. He was a void creature wrapped in a cloak with only a gaseous planet-shaped head exposed. However, when Pope quietly handed over a note with the name Francis Morgan written on it, the other party shook his head and immediately destroyed the note. Pope also directly understood the other party's intention and directly left the intelligence station. It seems that teacher really doesn't want me to directly obtain information from the void. Nicholas, let's go there and try our luck. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.